Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg. It's the 24th day of October 2024 and welcome to our show today. We have first off the Grid with Dr. David Kent, Ralph the IT guy, and Karen the Riveter. And then the second hour of Brandenburg News Network, we've got Jonathan Cagle on. And Jonathan is one of my all-time favorite research heroes. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think anybody does a better job. And I'm going to tell you what, until I met Ricky Davis, there was not even a close comparison to anyone in second place out there. So now I got two of them sitting at the top, and that's Jonathan and Vicky. And I just absolutely love both of them. But in the meantime, I'm going to bring Off the Grid on, and we are going to be talking about preparedness today. How you guys doing?
Good morning.
Good. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm trying to get everything set here. It's a slow start to the day. So what's going on in you guys' lives today? What are we talking about?
Well, something I was thinking about that we might want to touch on that I don't think we've talked about too much is the importance of the ability to repair clothing and shoes. And we've talked about shoes a little bit, but that's one thing that I've thought about that is, I think, really important to think about is what happens, we're coming up on winter here. What happens if you are in a situation where you need to repair your clothing or your shoes to be able to survive, in less than optimal weather conditions? Do you have everything that you need to be able to do minor repairs? And do you know someone who is able to sew and knit and crochet and all of that kind of stuff? Or are you just purely reliant on Amazon to make sure that you've got enough gloves for, tomorrow?
You think if the grid goes down, Amazon will stop delivering?
That's a good question. But I think too, one of the biggest problems that people have, and this sounds really stupid, is dry socks. When you're out there, if you can't keep your feet warm and dry, you're going to have a real problem. So like for me, being outside a lot in the winter, usually I break out my snow pants in October and I wear them until about April or May, right? And so because when I'm outside, you've got to be warm, and the layers that you wear, like coming into winter, are critically important. You've got to keep your hands and your feet warm and be able to keep them warm. One of the things that I like the little hand warmers that you break the seal, and then you put the little hand warmers in your gloves and such in the wintertime. That gives you a lot more mobility, and it will keep your hands warm. But I also have several pairs of Korean War paratrooper boots, the Mickey Mouse boots, and you put a pair of alpaca socks in there, and your feet are always warm, and it can be 40 degrees below zero. You can walk on those things all day long, and you will stay warm in those areas.
Well, you look to World War I, that was one of the big problems was the socks. You had trench foot, all over the place from not having an adequate supply of dry socks. And a while back, I actually bought I tried to learn how to knit and just not very good at it. But came to the conclusion, because I was not very good at it, and I still wanted to be able to make socks if I had to, I ended up getting a World War I era circular sock knitting machine, and those are cool.
Of course you did, Ralph.
I've also got a book on knitting socks too, but it's kind of useless because I suck at knitting.
That's funny. Yeah,
I can crochet. I've never knitted.
I've knitted and crocheted. My grandma tried to teach me how to tat, because that was one of those old skills that a lot of people had that was her age. In 1901 she was born, and she could sit there and just throw that tatting shuttle just like this, and because tatting is the art of making lace by knots. You make little knots and such, and they hold like the strings in one hand and pass that tatting shuttle back and forth between it. But she just sit there like this all day long and tat lace, and it was absolutely beautiful.
that the sock machines, that is, they were having so big of a problem with trench foot that there was a government program, both in the U.S. as well as in Canada, to give away circular sock knitting machines to people, provided they would use them to make a certain number and a certain quality of socks for the military. And that would be basically how they would pay off their machine, is by delivering socks made with the machine. And so there's a bunch of those old sock knitting machines around. They a lot of times they go for very high prices now too, but there's even 3D printed ones that you can get the files for and print yourself. It's really kind of a neat system.
Hey, could you make me one of those, Ralph?
Probably.
Yeah, I think I need one of those. That would be kind of a fun thing to play with.
Yeah, they're kind of cool machines.
Well,
Yeah,
if you
they
don't have one, you can order them from Amazon. Some really warm socks, and like ice fishing boots are great. Like I've got a pair of ice fishing boots. I've had them probably for 20 years, and you never get cold in those things, and they're not that expensive. Probably under $100.
I think that's really important. And the other thing to keep warm is if you have something that covers your cuff area. Like I have these little, they're like rabbit fur knitted, I call them middies, but you can put it in so your fingers are free, but it keeps where the blood comes close to the surface of your body. If you can keep that warm, like your neck with scarves and your wrists and your ankles, quite often your whole body will feel really warm. I think that's a fairly important skill to have, especially coming up on winter.
Now those I can supply you with. My mom, because she's arthritic, she likes to crochet. It helps her hands, and she makes these wrist covers. She used to do them with a hole in for the thumb, but she said people's wrists and hand sizes were so different that it was easier to just match everybody by making just the solid wrist shape without the hole. But she made some for me that were different colors, and they're pretty, and they're really soft. Didn't need them a whole lot last year, but we'll see.
Everyone should know someone that can knit, crochet, and sew. That is it is becoming such a lost art anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
And actually even making patterns off of, to be able to fit people. I actually have a dress form where you can adjust the size of the dress form, and you can actually make your own patterns. And a great way to learn to pattern make is to study how they make patterns for shoes. Because, I don't know if you guys know it, but I'm like totally obsessed with shoemaking and that sort of thing. Just to see how that process goes is really amazing. There's some wonderful videos out there on people who make bespoke shoes and how to make a pattern for your own foot to make it actually match. And I know that would be a big deal for you, Karen. I'm going to bring something else up here a minute. And unless you guys want to stay on this topic for a little bit, we can do that.
Well, on the note of shoes, I think anybody out there that has a 3D printer should probably have there's several different models of 3D printable shoes out there. Make sure you have some TPU filament to be able to print them, and the models for those, and that way you've got an ability to at least make some kind of shoes if you have to. If you don't have the skill or ability to make shoes, more conventional ways, at least you've got a 3D printable option.
Which brings us to the next option, is that where do you get the raw materials for to make those shoes? Most of the leather that goes into our shoes right now comes from pigs. It's a hog leather, most of it. And so I know a guy that was he was a tanner at Wolverine, which is in Rockford here in Michigan, and he did leather tanning. And they, all the chemicals to soften it and break it down, how long it takes to actually tan raw leather. And he said most of it's pig leather. But there's other materials you can make shoes out of in a pinch, and or you can repair the ones you have enough to make it work. So until you get them, because honestly, that's one of my biggest concerns is what happens if the grid goes down and we can't get shoes from where most of them are being made. Some of them are being made here. There are shoemakers across the United States, but not enough to supply the United States with actual shoes that you can walk in and work in. And so that's a big deal, is to be able to look at and in a pinch, how could you retool something or make shoes that would you'd be able to walk in for a long time, for a long distance, or work in, like work boots. How do you pad that up around the ankle so that you don't get injured just from blistering or wear on your feet? It's a really big deal. It really is.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring up this. It's kind of cool. So I found this, and I thought that Epoch Times did a really good job making a guide to home preparedness. So I thought we'd go through this. 2 hurricanes have barreled through the southeast in just 2 weeks. Hurricane Helene thrashed North Carolina, and Milton left 3 million people without power, and at least, they said, 10 people dead in Florida. They're not even talking about North Carolina. Everybody in the Flynn network that I know, or that knows General Flynn, there's not really a network there, I should say. People that follow General Flynn, they're saying that there's probably about 20,000 people that died in that hurricane in South Carolina as well as Tennessee. They're not talking about it, which is very concerning, but family communication and being able to communicate, an evacuation plan, what you need for evacuating, and for a basic emergency kit. Cell phones with chargers and backup batteries, battery powered hand crank radio, and weather radio alerts, flashlights, first aid kit, batteries, a whistle in case you need a signal for help, dust mask, plastic sheeting, scissors, duct tape, moist towelette, garbage bags, plastic ties for personal sanitation, wrench, plier, manual can opener for food, and local maps. I think this is really interesting, but we can go through. They actually have like nice little screenshots on this. Isn't this cool?
Yeah.
I think I have a plat book for my county, which would be great because it's pretty detailed. It's not like just a road map. I mean, a road map is great, but it's not going to have the topography information that you would need if you were traveling on foot, because there's no gas and no vehicles work.
That's a cool idea.
I like this family disaster plan. I think that if something happens, everybody needs to, the people that they care about have a way of, meeting up somewhere. I think it's really important.
How would you approach that?
Well, what I've done is I've told my kids and the 4 kids, to meet at our house, get here somehow when it's safe, because we have everything here to survive, enough food for everybody and all the other stuff. So just a simple thing like meet here.
What if you can't get there?
Then they can't.
You need to have a plan B location. I mean, look at North Carolina for an example.
Yeah, well, I guess the plan would differ depending on where you are. Absolutely.
No,
So
I don't
looking
think I don't think it differs, and I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it's not a bad idea to have a plan. What if you've got a situation where the roads are blocked with the enemy, or some kind of natural disaster prevents you from getting to the place that you want to go? Or what if the house burns down or something like that? Is there a plan B where someone, if they could not get to you or your home, is there a secondary location that you would be comfortable? Like, my parents are on the other side of the state. They're elderly. They're not walking here. I know that I could figure out how to get to them if I needed to. But I also know they're surrounded by a bunch of other people that are in a similar situation to them. So I have some expectations about how prepared they are for this kind of scenario, and I'm not going to initially worry about them all that much. But over some time, I probably would want to try to get there. And I could probably figure out how. I know that they could not get to me. On the other hand, I know my brother is on the other side of where my parents are and about the same distance away. So he could probably have a similar, he's not going to get to me either, but he could potentially assist my parents as well. But yeah, is there a work or a school that could serve as a secondary spot to meet at? Or even just to know that they have achieved shelter or could achieve shelter. If your kids are at school and it's closer to be to get for them to safely get to a workplace than to get to home, maybe that's stop one along the way.
Well, and what if you can't travel the road safely?
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, if there's a a shutdown of some sort, because if they tell us, I had somebody that's a friend that's in the military say that if they say do not go outside, stay where you are, shelter in place. What's the plan? And then how do you communicate with each other if they're do you know what I mean? It's like what are you going to do to shelter in place? Does everybody have enough to get them to be able to keep them decently okay for at least a few days wherever they are? Do people have a bug out bag? Do you have a basic kit of some sort that you can carry with you at all times in case? What happens if we get EMP'd and you're on the road 20 miles from home? Likely your car is going to be fried. And so, because with all the computers in it, unless you drive something like, I don't know, like a Model T or something like that, what are you going to do that's going to protect your vehicle? Not really protect it. You won't be able to protect it against that. But what are you going to do if you got 20 miles away from home? What would you need?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that goes back to that keeping a kit or bug out bag or something in your car, especially in the winter. Like those boots we were just talking about. Throw them in the trunk of your car.
Something there I was noticing on screen that I think people also kind of lose track of a little bit is the you can go 3 weeks without food thing that they had on there. I think people underestimate their ability to go without food for long periods.
You think?
Yeah, because if you get into an emergency situation, get your water figured out way before you got to get your food figured out. Because, like, I had a medical issue several years ago now where I was not able to eat for about a month, and I did just fine on that. And it really is a lot less difficult than you think it is.
Yeah. You need
Yeah,
water.
if you can get yourself, ooh, this is kind of cool. This is Ralph put this in the chat here. Yeah, if you look at that, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's nice.
Little gear, survival gift for dads and men, dads, and husband emergency survival. Let's see.
Cheap
$29.
too.
$29.
Yeah.
What in the world? I have no idea what's even happening here. Camping wire saw. Cool.
Yep, everyone should have some of those, and or one of those, I should say. And this kit includes one. Another thing too that I think is really helpful is to have some Kevlar string. You should have some kind of string or rope or something like that anyway, and a lot of it, because string, rope, paracord, all of it is incredibly useful in an off-grid situation. Kevlar is kind of interesting though, because you can also use it as a wire saw. It's abrasive enough. You don't want to have that as your only string option, but it's abrasive enough that you can use it to cut like small branches and stuff if you need branches for a fire or something like that.
Mm-hmm. One thing I noticed on that list was it said, when in doubt, throw it out with food. I think it's really important. Like, the last thing you want is to be sick in any type of an emergency, because that can kill you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
on the right side, number 3, when in doubt, throw it out. Smell your food. You have a couple of people smell it. Just make sure.
Yeah, but go for water first.
Same with the water.
there you go. Water. Ensure you have 1 gallon of water per person per day for drinking, cooking, and basic hygiene. For 2 weeks supply, that's 14 gallons of water per person. Think about that. That's a lot more than what most people even keep around. And here's your filtration treatment. We have the straw and pump filters, countertop filters, and there's Dr. David's favorite, bleach in water.
Mm-hmm.
Unscented household bleach. For cloudy tap water, use 16 drops. Chlorine dioxide tablets or iodine. Never use tap water to make ice, wash dishes, cook, drink, bathe, brush your teeth unless you know it's safe. You know, when I was in India, I brushed my teeth with like 7-Up or something like that. It sounds crazy, but there was a you didn't want to brush your teeth that hadn't been through anything that wasn't processed.
Yeah, and if they're so once in a while, if you see like water systems where they have to do maintenance on the underground pipes, a lot of times they'll issue a boil water order for the area around that. Part of the reason why the water system is considered currently to be reasonably safe is that it is constantly pressurized. So if there's any contaminants, it can push it out of the lines. It doesn't come into the lines and then get washed down the lines to the houses. Well, if you lose pressure on that system, you can't guarantee that anymore. And so if there's a grid down situation that takes the pumps down on the water system, it could be a situation where the water system is not actually safe to drink for a considerable amount of time after the grid comes back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have like a backwash potential there.
Yeah.
And if there's a leak, it can come back in the leak rather than leaking out, leaks in.
And
So-
chlorine also tends to, they add chlorine compounds, a lot of times just basically bleach, to municipal water sources at low concentrations, but that chlorine also tends to leave the water in some form or another, because most of the time it will evaporate off as gaseous form in a not very long amount of time. So even if it's sitting there stagnant, it tends to lose its disinfecting properties fairly quick.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You mentioned ice is really important too, because remember, if it's ice and you put chlorine bleach in it, it's not going to do anything to the inside of the ice. So stay away from ice.
Good point.
If it's contaminated.
So food, it says aim for 2,500 calories per person per day is a minimum. You know how fat I would be if I ate that many calories? That's like, man, I would be like a little fat chickadee sitting on a wire, all winter long. I'm going to tell you what, I can't eat that many calories. Try to consume more than 1,200 calories. That's probably actually a lot for me. Anyhow, so grains, legumes, fats, and protein. Fats is another one that is a tricky thing. And okay, so I'm going to go back to my dad, who was absolutely brilliant kind of a guy. One day he comes home and he bought 36 pounds of butter because he loved butter, and he froze it. Froze butter.
Tastes good.
You can do
Yeah.
as much as they have made us afraid of fats. Honestly, I'm kind of a fan of a high fat diet, because I think if you get your calories from fats, whether it's a carnivore diet like David's on, and the fats in your meat and such, but your body needs that. Your brain needs the fat. Your your skin needs the fat, whether you're doing, high fat content, say like avocados or nuts or even eggs have things. That brings me back to something else. When we eat a lot of I'm gonna put eggs in the seed category. I know everybody's gonna argue with me over this, but think about this. When you have that egg, that seed, that object that's in the ready to grow stage, right? Like eggs or seeds. There's something about about eggs and seeds that has everything self-contained to bring forth life, right?
Uh-huh.
So with the plants, you put water on it, the eggs or the seeds germinate, and whammo, you've got plants. Same thing with the chicken. You get the sperm and the egg together, and whammo, you're gonna have all kinds of nutrient dense.
Is that how it goes, Whammo?
Yeah, whammo. That's how it works. Whammo. You got a baby. You got a chick, right? So yeah, but honestly, there's so many nutrients in eggs and in seeds. So whether you have quinoa on it, which is a complete protein. You can do flax and chia and millet and sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, all of those seeds, especially if you get out, because I was vegan for 5 years, especially if you get the super seeds figured out, it really is an incredible boost to your health.
Absolutely.
And also, if you have a proper supply of fats, and keep in mind that a lot of the plant fats do tend to oxidize and go rancid fairly quickly. Coconut oil is one of the ones that tends to be stable the longest. But keep in mind, too, that if you have those fats and oils around, if you have an oil lamp, you've also got light and heat.
You can use coconut oil as a moisturizer. You can use coconut oil for so many things that are just healthy. Put it in your coffee and watch things in your body magically change. It's amazing.
A lubricant, a rust preventative.
Yeah.
Toothpaste.
I think that one thing that's going to change, we should talk about changes that we think are going to happen over the next few years with President Trump and Kennedy and all these people. But one thing I think is going to change for sure is our diets. The chronic health and metabolic conditions that is just rampant throughout our country, and neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and stuff. It's our diet. It's killing us. And I think the animal fats are like a key component that I think you got to think about anything that they're pushing on us is probably the opposite, right? Don't eat fat, stay away from fat, eat sugar instead.
In the 70s that happened. And then look at how our health rates just plummeted.
Terrible. Yeah. I mean, everybody's sick.
This is really cool because Trump's going to troll Harris because she lied about working for McDonald's. So he goes to McDonald's. He knows McDonald's is not a healthy place, but it's not the first time that he's been there or bought people burgers or whatever. Right. And it gets followed up with RFK Jr. talking about seed oils and food and how it's transformed the quality of the food from fast food and how that can change with Trump. And so Trump didn't need to embarrass McDonald's, who gave him this spotlight. He let his partner in the medical community do that to say but they didn't say McDonald's is destroying the country. They said we can do better and McDonald's can do better. Yeah. And I thought that was a fantastic message. And of course, it inspired a great opportunity to put me next to Trump on my new meme, my new favorite meme.
Yeah, that was fun. I posted that.
There was one meme that I saw on that I loved. That was, it's not McDonald's anymore. It's just Donald's.
Yes.
The rightful president of the United States, I might add.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But isn't that, I think it's a great thing because you don't have to destroy everything. You can change things. You know, McDonald's used to be, when I was a kid, it was the fun place. It was the family place.
Yeah.
It wasn't known as the fattening, destroy your children's health place. It was about family and having an opportunity to eat away from home, which was still kind of a novel concept when I was a kid. So we don't have to destroy the good aspects of everything. It's like Disney. Well, we don't have to destroy everything about Disney, you know. I love Lady and the Tramp, but I don't love what Disney has become and what they've done in so many ways. I don't buy a Lady and the Tramp toothbrush, and you know, all of the garbage that comes with that marketing. I've never been to Disney World. That kind of stuff it's just too much to me. It teaches our children a different set of values that I'm interested in. But I like to watch a movie that's got some wholesome qualities to it and it's cute, you know. We don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater and everything that we don't like about our country, but we can change things for the better and we can return to godly ways of living.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Really
Intermodal
good
Mike
point.
just posted, let's talk about solutions, not just the symptoms of tyranny. There you go. There's your solution right there. 12-day countdown to election day. Vote Trump 2024. That's your duty, everybody who is truly an American citizen, not illegal aliens and fence jumpers and all that sort of thing. We need to go out there and take that commitment serious and vote on election day, which is the lawful way to vote.
Yeah. So, with the whole oils as fuels thing too, if a lot of the oils that go rancid, provided you are properly rotating out your oils so that you have a fresh supply of them, just like you should be doing with any of your perishable supplies, rotate them out. If you do that with oils, when oils go rancid, it's the same process as the oil burning, just very, very slow. It's oxidization. And so a rancid oil a lot of times is still going to be a viable fuel source. You can use that, you know, possibly in an oil lamp, might be a little bit more sooty. You can use that as a method of making damp wood easier to start a fire with. There's all kinds of actual uses still for rancid oils once they are not suitable for cooking. And
what about like wrap a stick and make a torch? Aye.
Yep. And a lot of diesel cars and trucks, particularly older ones. The newer ones are a little bit more sensitive, but a lot of the older ones can actually run on straight vegetable oil as a fuel. Do some research with your own car to verify that. Not all of them are capable of it anymore, but a lot of them can run on that. A lot of modern cars that can run on, like the flex fuel cars that can run on E85 gas, a bunch of those can run on straight up ethanol. And that's just, you know, if you've got vodka, you particularly a real good high proof vodka, you've got a long-term stable version of ethanol, provided your car's capable of it. It may be possible in a pinch to run it on it. Depends on your car.
I know in restaurants that they save the fryer oil and some company comes and picks it up once a month or something. What do they use that oil for?
You can, if you filter that, you can either some diesel vehicles can burn that directly, as long as it's filtered so that it doesn't have the bits of food in it.
Yeah.
Other vehicles need slight processing of that vegetable oil to turn it into biodiesel, which is burnable in pretty much any diesel engine, but it does require a little bit of processing. It is processing that you can do at home. The chemistry is not particularly difficult. There's a lot of people that have done DIY vehicle conversions to be able to run on either refined biodiesel that they've done themselves or on straight vegetable oil for vehicles that were not already capable from the factory of running on it. There's all kinds of cool options with diesel engines, though.
Well, those companies must do very well, because I don't think maybe they do pay the restaurant, but pennies probably to just take their oil.
It depends, but also think about the shops that do oil changes and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, to repurpose that. My dad did some of that when he was still alive. He worked for that occasionally because he was a mechanic and welder and could pretty much make and MacGyver's way through anything. So everything was useful to him.
What did they use that oil for?
He would filter it and he would burn it.
Motor oil?
So, yeah, he had a used oil burner, and he got it figured out how to use that to heat the house, their house from the basement. So all the floors were always warm. So it was like a first generation of like in-floor type heating. So he used that for that, but he used all used oil, and that's what he burned. And it was pretty interesting. Here's another oil solution. Okay, so if you can buy pails or buckets of sealed wheat berries, and they can last for say like 20-25 years if they're sealed, usually 15 though. And if you fresh grind wheat, the oils in wheat berries stay stable until you grind it, and that's when they start oxidizing. So you can use that as a really good fat too, as in the raw wheat berries.
I have a question, Ralph. Is it the oxygen that causes the oil to go rancid?
Yes.
So if you bought a little can of nitrogen, like they use for wine bottles to keep those fresh after they've been opened, you could just shoot some of that into the container to displace the oxygen. So I think it's heavier, so it sits down and creates a layer of nitrogen to keep the oxygen out from touching the oil. You could probably make the oil last a lot longer.
Yep.
Food oil.
Either that or carbon dioxide. You can do that with getting like a chunk of dry ice and throw it in with food, and that's part of the reason why when you're preserving food, like you can preserve say dry beans or rice or any kind of a dry anything really. You can preserve it much better if you use an oxygen absorber or throw some dry ice in with it, and the carbon dioxide will replace the oxygen. But the way that the oxygen absorbers work, most of them are actually just raw iron. And so they're iron inside of a packet. And the packet is porous to air, but doesn't let the iron out. Well, what happens is the iron rapidly rusts, and that soaks up all the oxygen in there and turns it into rust. Leaving behind all of the other gases in air, and air is mostly nitrogen, so it forms a protective nitrogen atmosphere inside of the packaging. It's really kind of a cool way to do it. Yeah, but how do you put that in the oil? I guess you have to rig up something so it's not in the oil itself. Yeah, well, if you did either, like you said, shoot some nitrogen in with it, or carbon dioxide or something like that, a great way to preserve it for longer. And you can use it for your wine too. It's really cheap. It's like a little whipped cream can.
Yeah, so things melt down. Everybody grab a glass of wine and just kick back and realize God's in charge. And
that's important. I think it's important.
And relax a little bit. Don't go crazy. That's our main job, honestly, is to keep our brain thinking and in the game, not to be running around doing stupid reactionary stuff, but really keep your calm on and realize that God's in control and it's going to be fine. You just might need to adjust your expectations of the way that the world works a little bit, which I think we can all agree that the world is not working well right now.
No.
Health and hygiene category, first aid kit. I think this is interesting. It's we'll have Dr. David evaluate this. Essentials recommended by the Red Cross. Man, Red Cross gets
Red
too
Cross.
so we can take this with a grain of salt, just knowing that the Red Cross was involved in all kinds of bad stuff in Haiti. We all know that, right?
Oh yeah.
And wherever there is an emergency, the Red Cross shows up, and guess what happens? Children disappear. Oh, I said it right on live broadcast. Anyhow, first aid kit. You want to go down through that, David, and give us your opinion?
Sure. The kit with the aid instructions. Karen talked about that a while ago, how important it is to have a book, to teach you first aid and things to do that aren't going to be included here. Compress dressings, bandages. I think that means like Band-Aids and stuff. Cloth tape, antibiotic ointment. Why buy little packets? Buy tubes of that stuff. Those little cuts, things can turn into bad stuff. Aspirin, I don't even know. Oh, yeah, 2 packets of aspirin. I guess somebody has a heart attack. I don't know. That's not going to do too much. Blankets, a breathing barrier. That's good in case you need to do CPR, but you don't need it. 2 pairs of gloves. Okay. Maybe a box of gloves.
This is kind of a bare bones kit here, right?
Yeah,
This is the little one that you put in your car, but I would make a more robust one to put in the car.
Yeah.
You come upon an accident scene, a little Band-Aid isn't going to help somebody who's no.
Exactly. Hydrocortisone. Yeah, absolutely. You have tubes of that. 3-inch gauze roll. I'd get, all kinds of gauze. You can't have too much gauze. Sterile gauze pads. Yeah. This is like the most basic thing maybe for a roadside, but the hydrocortisone ointment, you wouldn't use that on the roadside. So this is a very lacking kit. I guess anything's better than nothing. There's so much more that we've talked about to have. One thing I saw in there was a thermometer. You'd be amazed how many people don't have a thermometer. My daughter called me up a couple days ago. She's in New York and she's shivering at night. She can't stop shivering and she thinks she's having a panic attack. I'm like, no, I think you have a fever. Check your temperature. She has no way to check her temperature. See if she has a fever.
Man, that's really handy having dad that's a doctor. My gosh, your kids hit the jackpot with that.
Yeah.
What I found
I get called a lot.
For thermometers, it's really difficult anymore to find a good quality non-electronic thermometer anymore.
That's what I was just going to say. But an EMP, if that destroyed all your digital thermometers,
That's a good point, Karen. Yeah. That's why you should have a real thermometer. They don't use mercury anymore, but
not in Michigan. You can still get them in several states.
The mercury ones?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Okay,
I remember we used to play with mercury when we were kids. It didn't harm us at all. So maybe that's why I got a bad back touching mercury.
Not that we know of.
Geiger counter. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's not a bad thing to have on hand, just as a precaution to know if there is an event, if it's safe to go outside.
It's not.
All right, guys, I have a Geiger counter in my house. So I want to know. And sometimes we'll actually measure radiation just because I'm that nerdy person. Here, I'm going to show you a box set of books right here that I think are incredibly helpful.
Wow.
So you've got first aid, trapping, gathering, and cooking, advanced bushcraft, as well as bushcraft 101. So this is a really amazing set, and I would encourage everyone to have that. I've got a whole bunch of this kind of stuff because I like to collect books. I've got a pretty decent library because I do like to collect all sorts of books.
Something else that I think is a really great thing that people can do now to practice is learning how to start a fire with multiple ways. I've talked to my husband about that. He's like, oh yeah, I could do that. And I'm like, you and I should just go out in the woods someday and just practice some different methods. You can teach me what you know. It's so that we have this ability. I've watched, how many seasons of Survivor have there been where survivors don't know how to start a fire, even with flint on hand and coconut husk and things like that. And I mean, you got everything. We have everything we need here in Michigan year round, regardless of the weather, to start a fire in our wilderness. And we have plenty of water, but would you know how to tap into it? That's another thing that I want to do is I want a hand pump on our property because we have water, but are we going to be able to access it if there's no ability to pump it without electricity or gas or some sort of mechanical thing?
In Michigan, you're never farther than 7 miles away from a water source. No matter where you are within 7 miles of water.
And then, like another thing that I learned from North Carolina. So I had no idea that they had storms for 3 days prior to the hurricane until just a few days ago. They had 10 to 23 inches like 2 days before the storm came. So we weren't hearing that on the national news. It wasn't a big deal because we're not there. But to them, it was extremely, we had 4 inches in Muskegon County in a lot of places that one day. And it flooded in some places. We had water in our basement. So that was a really big deal for us. They had 10 to 23, and then the hurricane came, and it flooded the area, all the roads in the area. That's why they couldn't leave before the hurricane came. They couldn't get out. So, but what about the toxins in the water system prior to? I did not know, but they have a PVC plant, they have a concrete plant, and there was something about some nuclear material. Those toxins were in the water and already causing illness and death prior to this issue. And then, of course, water spreads underground. That was one of the complications of the search dogs, by the way, indicating everywhere, because when a body decomposes in watery places, the scent goes everywhere, and it's very hard for the dogs to discern exactly where a body is in that scenario. But that water is carrying all the decomposed dead matter from people and animals, wildlife. All the dead things are decomposing in the water. Plus, you've got all this other chemical toxins that are spread in the water. So there are people that are rebuilding in their homes. Maybe they had some level of flooding, but they're trying to clear it out, dry it out, and move back in. And what they were saying is that FEMA is aware of this, and they're not stopping them from doing it, knowing they're wasting their resources because those homes have to be condemned because of the toxins. There are people who are trying desperately to get back on land that is deadly to them, and they just don't know it because they're not thinking about testing the soil. They don't have the resources or the knowledge to do that. But, if we already do have toxins in our environment. We just don't know how much. And if we were attacked in that way in Michigan, all that water that we have might potentially be unuseful unless we had a way to clean it up.
Did you see that dogs were randomly there? A lot of the search dogs down there are being reported to. They started dying, as well as the horses that went down there for rescue.
I have not heard that.
Yeah, that seems to be a thing. There's a guy that's reporting on this, that's been working on there, and he said one guy has 10 search dogs and 4 of them are dead and the other 6 are sick.
Wow.
So no, I can't confirm that. The guy said that. I have no reason not to believe he's telling the truth. However, not being there, you gotta look at everything a little bit like with is this true or not? And I don't know if we can get a real good read on that yet. But the report was that both dogs and rescue horses are dying down there.
Well, that would go along with this. It was a video that I shared. I don't know, several days ago. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was a man who had been through a number of different disasters in the past. And he said that he was there in North Carolina, and he said, this is like a 1.5 on the 10 scale for destruction in his experience. Because like a tornado or a normal hurricane, everything is destroyed in a certain area, and then this location, it's so widespread. That's why it's a big deal. But it's the level of destruction there wasn't so bad. But then he started talking about the toxins, and he was the first one that I heard ever talking about this. And he was talking about how FEMA knows. So did they toxify this community prior to, so that they could take the land? Or is it just a byproduct of this this kind of how they've done this and how many communities across America?
Yeah, I think the train derailment was the same thing. It's to poison the land to get the people out. The government take over, or some companies take over and put in their.
I kind of wonder too.
Their land. It's a land grab.
I think
kind
so
of wonder
too.
too how much of it is just basically a cover up for existing pollution.
Yeah.
That is then being exposed because something tipped it out of being able to be secret.
Yeah. Well, that's what he was saying. I can almost guarantee that you'll find a class action lawsuit. And I think if I was one of those people, I would probably not sell my land to the government or anybody else. And even if I couldn't live on it, even if it was destroyed, toxified, whatever, and I'd make the people responsible for it. If the government or some other entity was responsible for creating that weather condition or toxifying the land, then they ought to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it would take, if it's possible to even clean it up, but they ought to be held responsible for it. It reminds me of Aaron Brockovich.
Mm-hmm.
But this could be potentially even a bigger deal. If it's a widespread area, I don't know exactly where he was talking about, but it just makes me think, like, what if some kind of toxin was spread over Michigan and it reduced our ability to have clean water here? Because I've got a creek on one side of me and a pond and a swamp on the other. It would be easy for us to just go take a walk and get a pail of water and then deal with it from there, even if I didn't have a hand pump situation. Mm-hmm. Is the water in the ground going to be safer than the water above ground? Is the rainwater going to, you could just collect rainwater. You really want to take water out of the sky right now? I don't know. I mean, maybe you could watch with it. Maybe, I mean, if the story about the dogs and the horses becoming ill or dying is true, it goes along with what this man said. He said, don't take of the water and don't get into the silt. He said, we have hazmat gear for all that when they have to look for or pull bodies, they are covered in gear that protects their skin from this stuff, because you just don't know. And these dogs, they're naked. In some, like in 9/11, you see these dogs with little booties because it protects their feet from the harsh rocks. And they might not be wearing booties in this kind of environment because of all the mud. So their feet are absorbing whatever they're walking around in, and their skin, it's getting into their bodies. And unless they're trained not to drink from a puddle that they come across, that's possible too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also think about 9/11. There was so much asbestos in those buildings and such that I heard that was one of the huge threats, was from asbestos in the buildings. And so there's a lot of questions that need to be asked there. And you can look at that, and you don't have to look too long to look at it and realize that what you're seeing is controlled demolition, especially Building 7 coming down. So to your point, Karen, the environment that we're in, there's a lot of things that we're not being told. And we just need to be a little smarter and think things out on our own. One of the next things on this was pet care, have enough pet supplies to take care of your animals, including food, water, and medication. Hygiene is essential. Sanitation supplies. This is what we're all talking about right now, is what would happen if the grid went down? How would you deal with it? Because the grid goes down, guess what? If you're in a city, you're probably not going to have water or be able to get rid of sewage and such. So what are you going to do when the toilet backs up and there's nowhere for it to go? What happens if it comes up from the sanitation system? It can do that. In Florida, what they did, this should be shocking to everyone, and I think it really proves out the fact that this is a land grab. FEMA came in and said all the trailer parks, not just individuals, but any trailer park that the trailers took on water, they have condemned entire trailer parks. They're not going one at a time. They're literally condemning the entire parks. That to me was enough to prove that it was a land grab, because there were certainly trailers that were high enough up not to be condemned. But if any of them had water in the trailer parks themselves are condemned.
I kind of wonder if some
right on
condominiums. They'll be full of condominiums soon.
I kind of wonder if part of that might be because they don't want people actually testing the trailers to see what was there, and they might find something like silver iodide.
Yeah, which is what they use to cloud seed. They've been doing that for years.
Yeah. I want to go back for a second to the pet food. If most people feed their cats and their dogs kibble, and back to the idea of the oil being rancid, kibble has a limit, a shelf life. And if that goes bad, if your dog's
what is that limit about?
I don't know, because I don't feed it anymore.
It probably depends on the type of food.
Yeah, it depends. And some of them have oil sprayed on the food to make it palatable. So I just know that, most people, if you're buying Old Roy from Walmart or Purina or Iams, whatever brand you're feeding, doesn't really matter. I mean, we could have a whole show on dog food. I could tell you a lot. I haven't fed it for years. Because I researched it and I didn't know quite what to do, but I started shifting pretty soon after that. And but in my household, I'm pretty knowledgeable about how to feed dogs. And basically, variety is helpful. Meat, bone, organ food, organ meat. Vegetables can be cooked. Grains are still possible. They're not necessarily the enemy, but basically, I would be feeding my dogs whatever I was eating probably, and I would do just fine with that, and I would be comfortable with it. But how many people would panic if they ran out of dog food and didn't have a clue? And if you didn't have, like Donna and I, canned meat, what would you feed your animals? If you didn't have the ability to, and all of a sudden, all of your canned meat supply that you thought you had for your people is going to your pets too. And your pets may be turning up their noses to it because they don't know what it is. They can survive on oats too, to some degree. But would you know how to make that work for them? Having a little bit of knowledge would make you more comfortable. And then when you're feeding your pets, you're not stressing and increasing your cortisol levels, which increases your risk of illness. Dogs and cats will be fine. But I think it's a good idea for people to have that little bit of knowledge. It's like the medical knowledge that we've talked about in the past. Just having a little bit of medical knowledge helps you not to freak out.
One last quick thing, I think maybe we don't have time, but
Jonathan's not here yet, so we're going to keep going until he jumps on. How's that?
You should have trading goods. We talked about that before, but trading, for stuff that you don't have or help, or to be able to pay a doctor or something, alcohol, cigarettes.
Oh, this is a perfect example. The other day, because I have some muscle soreness issues, I talked to my naturopath, and she said, I can bring you a couple of remedies that I've never heard of. I'm not going to find them online, but she knew exactly what I needed. She says, I'll bring them to you. And she told me how much she would charge for me. And I said, well, I might not have that in cash on me. Would you take some eggs? And she's like, yeah, I would barter for some eggs.
Nice.
And I
Nice.
did have the cash on me, but still, it was a perfect example because she's doing a carnivore type diet right now. So it was perfect. And she doesn't have chickens. But yeah, perfect example. But I was thinking a little while ago, Donna mentioned wine. And I don't drink. That wouldn't do me any good. But boy, if I was out of chocolate and sweets, that would be a hardship for me.
Yeah. No, that's a
So
good.
I have thought about, I want some of those, freeze dried Skittles or some Skittles or sweet
great
tarts or
read.
something, or jam, which might not do if within a week of not being able to be refrigerated, the Jello tomato jam stuff that I have might start to mold and go bad. But if you've got some sweets, chocolate, alcohol is medicinal uses as well. Those things we've talked about in the past are great things to have on hand to barter with.
Well,
And
what's
Donna,
really
you talked
fun-
about sweets before too as being a really important one.
Well, it is because you have to keep people's minds calm, and those comfort foods is a
Yeah.
big part of keeping everybody in a bad situation, keeping their morale up, doing the things that it needs to help people mentally cope with large changes in life. Because honestly, every time there's a change in life, people have a grief response to it. Doesn't matter what it is. It's not just limited to losing people you love. If you lose a job, you'll have a grief response. If you have a change, and the reason why I know this is because we were warned about that whenever you adopt, even if a child comes from where my youngest daughter came from, and it was bad. I mean, she had worms crawling out of her. I mean, it was bad, boils all over her body, very, very bad conditions. They will, even if they go to something that is like so much better, and I could tell you the reactions of actually having food from a child that comes from an orphanage, and what the reaction is to when they all of a sudden realize that they don't have to fight for food anymore. It's complete and total disbelief. And so, but regardless, they still mourn the familiar. And I'm going to bring this back to the Bible here, because we're going to talk about Sarah when she looked back, and I think Ralph has talked about this a lot, and turned into a pillar of salt. Many translations change, have different ways people interpret this, but I think probably the most likely reason why they said that she turned into a pillar of salt was that she looked back to what they had, and she got salty. She was sour. She couldn't go forward. And so she spent all of her time mourning what they had instead of what they have. And so her behavior became sour and salty. And so I'm not sure. I wasn't there if it was a literal pillar of salt, but I think that the allegorical way to look at it as a looking back. Don't look back.
Yeah.
You got to look forward when things change, and realize that you have to be able to cope here and now, and be thankful. Reach a point of gratitude that no matter what happens, you're grateful for what you have, and look for the gifts that God gives you at that moment in time, and all the miracles He's giving you, even in the midst of huge change, and how to cope. And the fact that He is, in fact, teaching us to rely on Him as we walk forward. So Jonathan's here, so I'm going to give everybody a very quick 30 seconds. Karen, Ralph, and David.
Well, I like something that Karen said, and we didn't really talk about it. Maybe next week we can talk about it. It's not quite survival, but we don't necessarily need to get rid of all of these evil companies. We need to get the evil out of them. And what's our future going to look like in the next few years, where we're not going to import from China and all these other countries, and we're going to have stuff built in the U.S. What's that going to look like? And can we prepare for that and take advantage of maybe doing something, getting something going now that we know will be really big in the next few years?
Ralph.
I think just the whole idea of alcohol. I don't drink either, but I think everyone should have alcohol on hand because you can use it for so many things.
Karen.
I agree. I have alcohol on hand. It's been useful for creating some medicinal things. What was I going to say? You guys were saying good things, and I was listening. Yeah, how many times has Trump said you're going to like what we're going to have in the future? We're going to make America great again. It's going to be the very best. And he said it with all confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe that and your faith in God is strong, then you'll be able to adapt and overcome. How many times have we done that in this country?
Should be doing it all the time.
That's what the people who came here had to adapt and overcome lots of worse obstacles than we have currently, in worse conditions than we have, and yet they still carried on and produced our generations. So we're tough stuff, Americans, and I have every reason to believe that we're gonna get through it.
Think about it as summer camp. If you lose all your conveniences, how many people like to go camping? Well, this may be a forced camping, but it could be a lot of fun too at the same time. So, well, thanks guys for being on. I'm going to go to a quick break, and I will be back on with Jonathan Cagle, and I can't wait to talk to Jonathan. He is like one of my very, very favorite people in the whole world, and smart, best researcher overall. I mean, the guy's just amazing. So, join us. We'll be right back. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 24th day of October 2024. Welcome to our show. And I am going to get right to Jonathan Cagle because I absolutely love this guy. Hey, Jonathan, how you doing?
Hey, Donna. Good morning.
Good morning to you. I'm so glad you're here today. You've been beast level posting, and I think that all of us want to hear your perspective on a few things that are going on, including the election coming up, which we know is going to have some problems, large problems. However, we still need to do our duty and vote in the election on election day, I might add. So how are you and what are we talking about today?
Good. I've just been working a lot. These next 2 weeks are the culmination of, so much time and energy put into the last really 2 years, and so there's a lot riding on, what happens on November 5th, and it's consequential not just for us Americans, but for the entire world, in my view. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I think America itself is at stake in this election. What we go forward and the United States of America actually looks like is at stake.
Yeah, it's a situation where this could be, I know everybody always cliche says this is the last, but this could be the last election that we even have the opportunity to contest, or blow the whistle on, because the technology advances that are happening at the same time that we're losing our liberties are designed to cover up for the bad guys. And so as long as they're in all of the levers of power and sending our tax dollars to themselves and to their buddies overseas, that that gap is only going to widen unless we do something um, meaningful and stop it and reclaim ground uh, with this election.
Yeah, it's crazy. Have you heard that they're actually allowing people who have never lived in the United States to vote in our elections? That was a new little news bit that came out, as well as I think you posted on this that there are 6 Secretary of State of the swing states that have decided to get together and collude as one group to, I'm going to just say it, defraud the American people of a free and fair election.
They always were. I mean, they were always in collusion. They're the same people that we knew from the 2020 battleground states as well as 2022. Um, but I think I saw, correct me if I'm wrong, I saw somebody had filed a lawsuit, maybe the RNC or somebody in, I feel like either Wisconsin or Arizona had filed a lawsuit to force. I now I remember it was Peter up in Wisconsin, I think. Apologies if I'm wrong on this, Peter. Had filed a lawsuit to contest the 68 or 70 some odd thousand um, basically unaccounted for registrations that they kind of float over here in the independent section or in the other unknown section. A lot of times those are the military UOCAVA ballots as well, which is where they go and they just suddenly, you know, Trump's winning by a lot or X candidate is winning by a lot, but oh, these over here, they overwhelmingly came in for the candidate and you can't see who they are and blah, like, nah. But so measures are being taken, and the reason that we're and that I am on such high alert is that this is game time, and so they're going to take actions that are antithetical to the American people. Our job is, and I've always said that the integrity of this election is going to be crowdsourced. So our job is to get criminality across whatever state, the states that we already know that are targeted, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota are the 6 battlegrounds from 2022 and 2020. But obviously there's a Texas element now that they're really going hard after. Virginia is always a problem, but California and New York are, interestingly enough, in play, in my opinion. It just depends on, are we able to get enough eyeballs in front of, the goings on? Because when you're doing that, there's an interesting dynamic at play now. When there's an election where the vibe, and Tucker, if you watched his interview, he said there's the vibe. He said Donald Trump's going to win. There's the vibe is too strong, and everybody feels it. And so now you're realizing that when you're putting, criminal behavior and fraud in real time on the public space, even in states that have long been just criminal strongholds, like, as far as elections are concerned, Illinois with Chicago and New York and California, these people are realizing that, okay, if there's administration turnover and my stuff's out there, even though we might win this state, I might actually have some consequence come back on me. And so you're forcing those states to think twice about continuing on with what they're doing. So um that's what we're doing. And it's crazy. You can see it's like a chess game. You can see, them make a move. You know, will expose this thing and that thing that they'll redirect to next, and you'll see them counter it with something else. It's crazy to see it in real time. It's almost surreal.
Yeah, and I think we've got enough surveillance out there on so many different things that I've been telling everybody, here's your warning. If you're out there cheating, you're going to get caught because we have so much surveillance on it. And I think that's a really good thing. I mean, the American people really didn't know how bad it was until 2020, in my opinion.
I don't think
And
any of
this,
us did, to be
I don't
honest,
think
though.
we did. And every day it's like you figuring out more and more ways that they have had put their little tentacles into, and have their communist tentacles into, in order to overthrow the United States of America. This is a communist takeover of the United States of America. And when it comes down to it, it's our responsibility at this point in time. We need to be in the game. We need to be voting. We need to keep our eyes open. If we see something, say something. And once they are in office, we need to learn to exercise our rights and hold them accountable, no matter who's in the office. I'm of course supporting the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, because I think that as an American, his rights were so violated. I mean, these criminal people went to the point of trying to kill the man, not one time, but multiple times. We're only hearing a couple of them, but I'm pretty extra sure there were many times that both he and his family's lives were in danger.
Yeah, it's the the environment we live in right now. We both agree it's not sustainable.
Mm-mm.
It's not America. It's communism and Bolshevism and Marxism all rolled into one, and it is a complete travesty and a miscarriage of not only justice but the Constitution. And you can see it with every bad actor that they reward and every liberty that they try to erode from us with every move that they make. And it's not sustainable. It would mean the end of our country, as we know it and as it was, you know, established by the framers, 246 years ago, 248 years ago. And the crazy thing to me, the thing that's most off-putting is how um assertive, like it, I mean, you've seen the World Economic Forum short videos where they tell you, you'll own nothing and be happy and you'll have chips and civil liberties are, and human rights are don't exist and things. I'm like, the gall of people like that, like the way that you assert that makes me think that you believe that you're going to be successful, number one, or that you've already succeeded. And if I have anything to say about it, I'll be damned. So it's like, same way as you. It's like, tell me I'm not able to do something, and then okay, watch. So um, it's 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 the worst people in the world thinking that they're going to dictate to me the rest of my life and my liberties, and I'll die before I allow that to happen.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And the other thing that's really disturbing to me is how many people at the lower levels of government are involved in this. Political operatives, the operatives within the parties. I mean, this place is crawling with people that are either straight up communists or captured assets that have followed what they said and are being used by these people. And how many payoffs are happening out there? There's so many people getting paid off. Follow the money. If you follow the money and see what's happened with these people or what they have as advantages and such, shocking. I mean, there's no words to describe.
It's amazing. I was telling one of my colleagues 2 or 3 days ago, I can't believe, regardless of, what your livelihood looks like right now, or your, you know, 1099 or your W-2 looks like in 2024, like what amount of money is worth selling your country at? And I'm shocked by the amount of people, which makes me think, Donna, especially with all the P Diddy stuff that's coming out right now. It makes me think that it's actually more of a blackmail thing than it is a money thing, because I think that reasonable human beings can justify passing up bribery and a short-term payoff. Do this for us for, these 2 or 4 years, and we'll give you X, Y, and Z. I think people can rationalize, even, people that aren't the sharpest tools in the shed, when they realize, okay, well, if I help you do this, then I'm going to be the target of everything that, you know, you're talking about. Like, so what protections do I have after the fact? They can justify and be willing to say, no, I'm not going to take the money and run, so to speak, in that regard, because I'm furthering and hastening my own demise. So I think it's a bribery or a blackmail thing. I think that people that are in positions of power were chosen, uh, whether you're Democrat or Republican. Like I don't think the
They're all the
party
same.
dynamic. Yeah, I think that the people that get put in front of us to, you know, play government and play elections and everything are people that have blackmail over them that is so damning that they'll literally go against their own country and their own well-being in the long run to for out of self-preservation in the short run. And that's what makes me think it's more like, yes, there's both, but I think it's more of a everybody in power did some real bad stuff and they don't want people finding out.
Well, I can tell you what my experience was. I had somebody that came here that was going to be a big helper. When they say I'm here to help, it doesn't matter who they are. Pretty much extra sure you need to take about 10 steps back from the crazy person who's lying to your face. And guy came here and promised me, or wanted to help me. The next thing you know, I mean, he's telling me I got to pay 20 grand in order to even get on the ballot to somebody's leadership fund, and starts quoting all sorts of things. And then he pulls out a thumb drive and it says, honestly, this is honest to God what happened. And I had a witness that watched it happen. Pulled a thumb drive out of his pocket and said, here, you can have this. And I didn't touch it, of course. I'm just looking at him going, because I was already done with him after the pay to play nonsense he had going on. And he said, if you use it, it'll get you in office. If you don't, it'll get you killed. And he said it was a stick of blackmail material on every single member of Congress.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm like, and so, I mean, he absolutely admitted he was going to hand it over. He was just like, here, use it. He said, you're welcome to use it, but it'll either get you killed or it'll get you in office. And I'm like, there's the driveway. Do not come back here ever again. Never again will you darken my doorstep ever again. And the amount of people that admit to being hitmen, that was another thing too, that I literally had somebody come up to me and said, anybody if you want anybody taken out, we'll take anybody out you want. And I'm like, you're done. There's the door. And of course, my first call was to somebody that was very high up in intelligence. And I said, this was just what was said to me. I will not be playing ball with these people. And, of course, that disqualified me for politics right there.
I can't
And so
imagine
badge
why.
of honor.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised by the USB thing at all. Like it seems like I almost posted about, I probably will make a post about it today, that the whole expecting that America's model is going to be, morphed into, if you want to be somebody in this country, you have to do something really bad or let somebody else do something really bad to you so you can, like go through this self-humiliation or degeneracy, like initiation kind of thing. I mean, that's not what America is. And whoever does develop that, they have to be removed. That's the cancer that is plaguing our country, is in rewarding the most degenerate of society. The hitman thing, I'm not surprised. I can bet that, the $10 that I have in my pocket that I probably know within reasonable certainty, I could name off 10 organizations that I bet that person probably is tied to. And the problem with our current situation in government in America is that I know the politicians that are going to be tied to each of those organizations as well as their lobbyists and the groups that they associate themselves with. And then you realize that encompasses a large share of Congress. And that needs to change.
Should I say it right now? I can go ahead and start us right down that path if you want,
Oh
because quite
gosh.
honestly, I am so disgusted at this whole thing. But all you got to do is look at the people with dual citizenships in our Congress, and we're going to make a clear differentiation between the Jewish people and Israel as a state, and the globalists that are Zionists. The global Zionists, we have some here. They're not Jewish, but it's a globalist organization that has infiltrated everything. And so, am I kind of over the target on that? I would say that I probably am. There was somebody that basically came out in the last few days that said, if you get in the way of Israel, we will eliminate you. Did you see that video?
Yeah, and see, the problem is, like, there's a lot of people that aren't Zionists, but are, whether it be through their upbringing or just through their own indoctrination, they believe that they'll always be Israel first, no matter where they live, whether they're in America or they're in Israel or they're in some other country. And the idea that whatever Israel wants, we make accommodations for, is absurd. And it's not something that, like, if you want to feel that way in Israel, that's fine. Go live in Israel. Don't vote in our elections. Don't be involved in our political process, because Israel, when I look at my history books, they didn't sign the Declaration of Independence. They didn't fight the Revolutionary War and win us our freedom from the British monarchy and King George. So um, it's like our country is being transformed into a vassal state by a lot of those same people. And I looked at that interview and I'm like, the gall. Like, this person truly believes he has enough control. And remember the verbiage that he used. Israel has the right to do this to the
He was
West.
threatening murder to anyone in the West that got in his way, that they would be eliminated or killed. He was threatening to kill Americans in the West if we stood up and got in the way of the state of Israel.
Yeah, and then you see the same day, I believe it came out, there was a Christian that was in the IDF that got killed recently, and they had a cross on his gravestone, and the chief rabbi of the IDF ordered the cross to be removed because it's her, not heretical or heresy or whatever. He used another word, but it's basically not, viable for the IDF and for Judaism. I'm like, we would never do that in America. We would never go to somebody in who is an Israeli American citizen leaves Israel to come to America to fight a war, kinetic conflict on our soil against enemies, and dies. We don't care what you put on their gravestone. We're going to honor them as one of ours and show them the same level of respect and honor and consider them a hero because they fought alongside us against evil. And I just, the people that are in charge in Israel, I, I would encourage them to rethink. I know they won't, but they're making decisions and public facing statements that are um, putting Israel in an existential crisis, because Americans don't just see that. The entire world sees that. And they see that when somebody goes on and makes a comment like that in an interview with, and how dare you make me agree with Sink? I can't stand Sink and the uh, Young Turks. But I'm like, when you've got me agreeing with with Sync over here, I mean, you are just out of your mind. Like, what are you even doing? Because Americans see it, the Middle East sees it, the Asian Pacific Islanders see it, the Latin American countries see it, and they realize that they have an idea that it's going to be their way or the highway, and they'll kill Americans, and they'll tell Americans they're going to kill Americans. you're saying this to the people that literally won World War I and World War II for you. Like, what happens if they just stop supporting you? Like, you're telling young 18 and 20-year-olds that are thinking about enlisting in the US military, which is a very honorable thing to do. You're telling them that they're going to go fight and die for you, but if you get in the way of their agenda, they have no qualms about killing you. You're going to lose people so fast. And when you don't have our resources and our people defending you, and you're on your own in the Middle East and the global geopolitical, landscape, you're God, you're poking a hornet's nest that you'll never be able to unpoke.
Well, and I think too, I mean, we should never have protected classes of citizens that we can't evaluate, because it's not just Israel or the Jewish people. Every organization, everything has been infiltrated by these commie bastards. There's no two ways about it. The Christian church, the has been infiltrated to, and all you have to do is look at the 501c3s and what they did during COVID and the shutdowns. That was a shame, and it should never happen again. But and I'll be the first to criticize it because I'm a Christian, and it's like that should never happen. But also, people that are Jewish need to know that we stand with the people. We stand with the Chinese people, the Jewish people. We stand with the people. It is the establishment, global governments, and their little lackeys in the economic world that have literally captured the assets of most of the world, and brought them to heel. And we're supposed to just be their little slaves. Have you seen how much documentation they are wanting through the insurance companies, through the census? The questions they asked on the census were just incredibly invasive, as well as reporting all of your assets. And I mean, all of them. If you're in business, the amount of reporting you have to do is absurd, because they have taken the liberty themselves to own everything you have. When you sign for a license, when you buy a car, they're taking possession of that and giving you the right to use it. Our property taxes, it needs to be done the right way. Like Axe My Tax was a total joke in Michigan here. But if you did it correctly and you taxed by what was allowable in the Constitution, not the 16th Amendment, that was also a violation. But you go back and you look at the original taxation structure. That's the way it should be done. Everything is out of whack because it's extortion from top to bottom. It's threat, it's extortion, and it's money laundering, and it's complete thievery by these people that have infiltrated and sit in the seats of power.
Yeah, and I wish it only extended to owning a car or owning a home, but it goes so much
Everything.
further than that. And I made a pardon me, I made a post, really a thread about Palantir about I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, let's
And
go there. I want to go into your posts and the stuff that you put out, because that's like, I feel like it's every time you open your mouth and you're talking about your posts, I'm like, Christmas, yeah.
So Palantir, if we want to think of our, genes and our DNA and our patient data as, the lease that we sign on a car, well, they had access to all of it, working in collusion with the HHS, and Palantir coordinates with a lot of groups that probably one of your hitmen came from, as well. And unfortunately, they had advanced knowledge because of the access to data that they had. They had advanced knowledge of, what mortality rates were, what therapeutics worked, which therapeutics did not work, and what the outcomes were across the global landscape. What the Chinese were seeing, what the Germans were seeing, what the Russians were seeing, and they knew all of this. they knew it in advance. And so in June of 2020, when Deborah Birx ordered all of our COVID patient data and DNA to be rerouted over to HHS so that they could collaborate with Palantir, who controlled Operation Warp Speed, by the way, they had known for 3-4 months at that time that things like remdesivir were harmful. Things like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine were actually wildly successful and effective. But even without treatment and just using things like zinc and vitamin C and vitamin D, they were finding that mortality was almost non-existent. And they knew that remdesivir, a drug that I've gone, you know, around the world with from Gilead, remdesivir caused an increase in mortality between 35 and 45x. So there's a difference between percentages and x's. So when you say 35 or 45x, 35 or 45 times what normal mortality is. So you're talking about 3,500%, 4,500% increase over and above just not administering it, just not using anything. And we knew this because we knew what we know for decades about coronaviruses. And the CDC had the chart out where they had even listed, the per age mortality rates, and everybody without four, serious comorbidities, everybody basically under the age of 50 was not at risk of serious side effects with COVID. And only until you got to age 70 would somebody be in the 99.7% survival rate. But everybody else was in the several orders of magnitude, like 99.996, 992. So I'm like, what we're literally going and throwing our entire lives on hold and upending our economy at the world stage, and implementing these draconian measures for something that is on par with the flu as far as lethality. And sure, I caught COVID, and I caught it before it was cool back in like December of 2019. Maybe it might have been January. I think it was around my birthday, um, January of 20. And it was tough for 3 or 4 days, but I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't take any of their drugs. I didn't take HCQ or IVM. I took zinc and vitamin C and vitamin D. Um, and I had my emergency mixers right there beside me at the ready, and I was guzzling those things every day. And after day 3 or 4, I was fine. Um, it did feel different. It felt like there was it gave you like a metallic. You ever had been sick and had a metallic taste in your mouth or whatever for whatever reason? Um, that's one thing I remember. I remember night sweats. One night I woke up in the middle of the night and it was like my entire body had just gushed all of exposed all my sweat glands all at once. It was strange. But they the point is, we knew all of this, and they hid it from us, and they had access to the most sensitive information about us that exists. And those same people now are using that facial recognition technology, which they have access to. They're using DNA and ID and the same PII that we would protect behind HIPAA or behind, SSA or MCOA or what have you. And they're using it to target innocent men in Palestine. These are not fighters. These are people that are just guilty of being Palestinian men of a certain age demographic and being in Gaza right now. and they're using it and attaching it to MQ-9 Reaper drones, and they're droning people indiscriminately. They're taking all the fighting age men and they're killing them or maiming them.
I didn't know
And
that was happening in Palestine. I didn't know that was the mechanism for that happening at all. And you know
Palantir,
about that? I didn't realize that Palantir was involved in that.
Palantir is absolutely involved in it. And the reason that it makes me so mad is because if you have access to such sensitive data, you should have an extremely, like if we're giving you an extreme amount of trust with sensitive information involving the American people and the world at large, but especially America because we live here, you should have a similarly extreme expectation of a high responsibility of care
Oh yeah.
in place and checks and balances in place to make sure that you're not weaponizing that data to be used for nefarious purposes. And not only did that not happen, that's exactly what they did. And they leaned into it. And then they made the people that they were victimizing at the same time feel otherized, like they were not part or they shouldn't be allowed to be in society. And so that's where it becomes so insidious, what they did, that you're like, okay, I like the idea of Palantir. I loathe the people that are involved with it. I'm going to stop at nothing to make sure that every one of them is in prison and that Palantir is destroyed. And it sucks to say because I think that, when Alex Karp and Peter Thiel got together and, handed over designing of Palantir to Gilman Louie and Chris Darby and the InQTel geniuses on our tax payroll. When they were building Palantir, that the concept for it was great, but it is clearly a monolithic activist platform designed to achieve the tyranny that perfectly matches what that guy who gave the interview saying he would kill American citizens. They're on the same team. Alex Karp is of the same mindset. He belongs nowhere near having access to that kind of information. And most recently, Donna, as it relates to elections and other things going on, we find those same goons in Palantir and other entities like Cerberus, for example, are accessing um, COVID-19 master data sets. Our central server for the United States is at Secure Server, which is basically GoDaddy. And they're going in and they're extracting, like, I think I counted 213,000 hacks of the COVID-19 master data sets, patient data records, just since January of this year, because
Wow.
they see the writing on the wall. They're a massive data call letter apparatus that is powered by machine learning, AI, and basically quantum computing. So they use predictive analytics to read the writing on the wall and determine their best strategy going forward. What they call the GTO play, game theory optimal. That's all this shit is centered around. What gives them the best chance at the outcome that is most palatable for them or most optimal for them. And so they do this for every single decision that they make. And so now that they realize, okay, well, we've war gamed this and we realize that Trump is probably even better than 4-1 over the opposition, especially Kamala Harris. Um, so we have to have contingencies in place. We have to, what happens if he gets in? Well, we need to start covering shit up. And so they're going in, they're using Pegasus, NSO OSY technology, which is originally, Israel's NSA, IDF Unit 8200. It's able to go in and hack any device, whether it's Apple, Macintosh, Google, what have you, Windows, with or without your manipulation. It can be your cell phone or your laptop or just about anything that would connect and be broadcast on the Internet of Things framework that they're building for us. And they can go in and extract information, manipulate information, delete information, add information. If you wonder how people get child porn added to their laptop whenever the FBI decides they need to discredit somebody and they want to say, here's some child porn on your laptop. This person's Pegasus is one of the major tools that they use to do that. And so we catch them and using the same tools that they use, their own tools, we can see that Cerberus is not only going in and hacking COVID-19 data, they're also going in and draining the Brazilian banking system. Like they hacked the financial network on the same day. They hacked the Brazilian financial system and the Brazilian banks on the same day that they were hacking COVID-19 master data. And so while they're draining accounts, stealing from people, they're also covering up for the heinous bullshit that they did to so many people. And it really comes down to, like, once you get it to this level of criminality, it becomes easier. It becomes simpler to understand because you only have to answer a few questions. Who would have the ability? Who would have the motive? And how big is that motive? Like, is it life and death for them? Because it clearly is. It's literally their freedoms, their liberties, and everything, because they've
And their
done some of the
lives,
work.
because they have committed crimes against humanity and treason.
That if think about it like this, Donna, if you had planned and executed 9/11 and or COVID and released a bioweapon on the world and used it to steal billions, if not trillions of dollars. COVID cost the American people at least $18.2 trillion. If you knew that you were guilty of that and you had the tools and the wherewithal at your disposal to potentially alter an election, what lengths would you go to make sure that certain people didn't get elected and certain people did, to protect you? You would stop at nothing, just about, wouldn't you say?
I can't even answer that question because I don't even think that way. You know, it's one of those things that I couldn't even put that into words because, you know, unfortunately for me, probably if something went in that direction, I would probably be the first one to say, okay, wait a second. So this is what's the truth.
Yeah. And to give,
I wouldn't hide it. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't hide it.
you want to say hello to Donna? This is my chocolate lab. We'll see if she'll.
Let's see.
Joy.
Who is that? I can't see your lab.
Joy.
Hey. Oh, what a beautiful dog. What's his name?
But her name's Joy.
Oh, Joy. Okay.
But
Joey at first.
yeah, she's whiny. She literally will, like, I'll keep the garage door open to keep air circulating when it's nice outside, but she'll go in the front door, like, whine to let her in, and then she'll walk all the way through the house, through the garage, and then come back out and do a lap, and then just come right back to the door and whine to let me let her in. So it's a fun game that we play. But to give some people some context, and not just hide people behind Cerberus. Who is Cerberus? Cerberus is Dan Quayle. He's the chairman. So for those who don't remember, he's George H.W. Bush, vice president. George H.W. is the biggest spook that's ever held the White House, in my opinion. He's had some heavy contenders like LBJ and others, but Dan Quayle, it's his firm. You also have his co-CEO is a man by the name of Bruno. I think his name is Jeff Bruno. He is on the board of the Wharton School at Penn. He is on the board of directors at Save the Children, and he is basically the chief investment officer of Cerberus's global real estate, equities, and division investment portfolios. So you're talking
Wow.
about the people that want to own all the homes and control the marketplace and manipulate the marketplace and use it to steal from retail investors like you and me. Um, and then they want to use the cash that they stole from us and funnel it into their causes that further erode our own civil liberties. Okay, hang on. Sorry.
Got to stop for pets. Always acceptable.
But yeah, I mean that's what's going on, and they're leveraging and taking advantage of their access to our own data and the tools that they have at their disposal that are paid for by you and me taxpayer, um, to take advantage of us. And you know, for people that don't know, you have organizations like Robinhood, which if any of your viewers are familiar with the AMC GameStop stuff that happened a few years back, where involving Ken Griffin and Citadel and Melvin Capital, and how they basically halted trading. Gabe Plotkin was Melvin Capital, and so they were losing money on this investment. They had held more shorts. It's called naked shorting. You own more puts on a stock than shares um, um, exist in the public arena to trade on. So um, they're called issued shares. So I think it should be illegal. But when they were losing the bet because AMC and Reddit people were buying up as much of the stock and they wouldn't stop buying it, the price
It was
was going up.
glorious too. It was glorious.
It was incredible to watch. And so instead of taking their loss, they literally leveraged their access and their power to turn the game off and then make it so that investors could do no more buying. One of the most illegal and infuriating things of all time. And a gentleman by the name of Stephen Cohen, who is part owner of the New York Mets, he has a private equity firm called Point 72. And his managing partner, I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Chandrakasar. He's from InQTel. He wrote this program at their basically algorithmic AI backed cyber trading algorithm at Lab 41. And so this asshole is literally using CIA technology to manipulate market prices and basically front run the American people in collusion with Ken Griffin and in collusion with InQTel, which is the CIA. And by the way, the CIA gets InQTel rather gets $120 million per year from the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA. And they take
Really.
that money and they invest in all of these startup companies that they want to, you know, use their technology for their own purposes. But that's taxpayer money. Shouldn't the taxpayer, if we're investing in these companies, shouldn't we get some of the realized gains if the company is successful? Or is that crazy of me to think that? Because they'll just dump money into these companies. It's a bottomless pit of picking winners. And then they'll use taxpayer money to fund organizations that are founded by foreign intelligence. Like everybody in Silicon Valley now, you're not getting startup capital for your cyber or your tech or your biomed firm unless you come from 8200 in Israel. So that it goes back to the gall that the guy had in that interview, saying they had the right to do these things. And it goes back even further to Ed Snowden when he was in Booz Allen Hamilton in 2014, 2013, and had made the disclosure that, yeah, our own NSA is carte blanche sharing all of our unfettered data with IDF Unit 8200 over in Israel. They have access to it. They're spying on Americans for Israel and vice versa. And why is that allowed? This
Right.
is America. And the fact that not only did we allow it, we didn't do anything about it except say, oh, Snowden's a traitor, he can't live here. No, bitch. I want to talk to the person who thought it was okay for this monolithic faction to believe it's fine to spy on me without a warrant and report it to a foreign intelligence agency. How does it relate today? Well, now you have organizations like the Israel On Campus Coalition, the ICC, which is on 17th in Washington, D.C., for anybody who might want to stop by and ask them some questions. But Goldman Sachs will fund on-campus protests at UNC, at Duke, at Penn, at Columbia, and a number of these other institutions that they have got their people embedded into.
Mm-hmm.
They'll fund these protests that are, under the guise of, pro-Palestine support, and their operatives will monitor the reactions on social media and on the ground on school campuses, American universities, gauging the responses to these protests that they are funding and executing. And then they will use their own Mossad intelligence to make threatening comments on social media like, we have facial recognition technology. Anybody who is supporting these protests, you have names, you have faces. We can make it so that your degrees are worthless and that your future prospects are slim. And that's when I was completely like done. That's when I was like, okay, now you have to be destroyed, because we're talking about American students, college kids, 18 to 22 years old, that your own foreign intelligence is not only embedded on the ground in those campuses, and not only are those campuses, Duke University arguably being the worst, but Penn is certainly right there. Duke University, the chairman of the board of trustees, her name is Laureen Sperling. She's the chairman of Combined Jewish Philanthropies up in Boston. Her husband is Scott Sperling from Thermo Fisher's board of directors, aka the PCR tests. And her dean of her medical school is Nancy Andrews from Wellcome Burroughs, Wellcome Trust, Jeremy Farrar,
Hmm.
the COVID creation and cover up itself. And over at Penn, we've got Julie Platt, the chairman of Jewish Federations of North America, whose sister is Amy Bressman, the president of UJA Federation, which we know, and I've talked about this on your show, is not an Israeli lobby. It's literally Mossad. And Penn, which is Wharton School, which is chaired by Mark Rowan himself, the chairman of UJA Federation, also Mossad. They basically did a hostile takeover at Penn with the help of Josh Shapiro, who I'm fairly certain it's his brother because they look like twins. John Shapiro from UJA Federation and from Israel Policy Forum and from Halil coordinated with Mossad elements embedded within Penn to use the protests to justify a hostile takeover. They removed the president, they removed one of the boards of trustees members, and they replaced those people with a Mossad asset, with an InQTel asset, and with somebody that was involved with calibrating COVID. And they did it all while they were extorting American students and threatening them and reporting back to the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs. And someone by the name of Dorothy Tannenbaum and Jacob Baim are two names that your viewers need to become extremely aware of because they're going to prison. I promise.
What was their involvement specifically?
So Dorothy Tannenbaum is she's part of UJA Federation and Jewish Communal Fund. I've talked about JCF in the past being kind of the Mossad slush fund in the United States. Well, Dorothy Tannenbaum is the chairman of the Israel On Campus Coalition. Jacob Baim is the president or the CEO, if you will. what they do is they spy on behalf of the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs on college campuses, and they were doing it in collusion with the higher ups at these universities, like I'd mentioned, at Penn and at Duke and at North Carolina and at Columbia. And those protests were being funded by Goldman Sachs. All right, we know this to be the case.
Wow.
Goldman Sachs, how does that relate to UJA? Well, Mark Rowan, the chairman of UJA Federation, one of his closest and most trusted trustees members at UJA Federation is Lloyd Blankfein, the longtime senior chairman of Goldman Sachs. And Amy Bressman, Julie Platt's sister, is the president of UJA. So you got Mark Rowan, and you've got Lloyd Blankfein, and you've got Eric Goldstein, and you've got Amy Bressman. And over here, while Mark Rowan is wearing his Wharton School hat, he gets to be chairman of Wharton School and then install Amy Bressman's sister, Julie Platt, as chairman of Penn, just to buy himself enough time to replace the previous chairman of the board at Penn with somebody who is friendly with InQTel, because the COVID situation was a combined joint operation of our own CIA with Mossad and Israel to basically target white people at large. And it's horrifying. So
what is their point? I mean, why are they trying to target that, white people? What's the point there?
So number one, they hate us. Number two, they blame us for the Holocaust. And I've put some stuff out in the last couple of months, Donna, that you should really look at. And this is not a hypothesis that I initially came up with. It's something that others have basically said, yes, this is what's going on. And it goes as far back as I mentioned a moment ago, 9/11, the same people, Michael Bloomberg, Scott Gottlieb, Alvin Krongard. These are all Apollo Global Management, Alex Brown, investment management, like operatives. And they got recycled 20 years down the road to be largely behind the COVID situation. So what they want is they want us to go away. They want us to be subjugated and to be their servants.
We're
And they
dead.
want to, and they want us, they want to control everything. And so that doesn't work for me. And as long as there's oxygen in my lungs, I'm going to do literally everything I can to expose you to the world and hope that courage is contagious, and it has been in spades. And now we've basically turned Twitter into sort of a crowdsourced solar winds, if you will, for the good guys, putting bad guys' dirty laundry all over the immutable blockchain. And the thing that makes me the most comforted is knowing that I've been very fortunate to be connected with some great people. Obviously, I've talked about the people that I work with a lot. In the last year, I've been connected to 3 different Q clearance people. And for people who don't know what a Q clearance is, it's the highest clearance. It's mostly in the Department of Energy. Those people are primarily the holders of Q clearances, but it's the highest top secret clearance that our government issues. And President Trump was found to have one in one of the lawfare lawsuits that he was having to go through. So the classified documents case that was a ruse. They were like, yeah, he has a Q clearance, so he's authorized to have these, even if he's not president. So,
which brings a lot into the discussion right there, because he's the rightful president of the United States. And if he's got a Q clearance still to this day, is that what I'm hearing you say?
no, he had it. It was found that he had it
He
at
had
the
it.
lawsuit. So I think that Mayorkas probably immediately revoked it. But yeah, it completely sabotaged their case. Like,
That guy
It
needs
was
to be on the most wanted list right there, Mayorkas. What a horrible person.
he's a humongous traitor and a
Psychopath.
criminal. And he's not going to have a happy ending to his story, I'll tell you that, because the Secret Service bullshit, the open borders bullshit, like he has ultimate oversight of all of that. And so we go back to the same questions: who would have the ability, who would have the motive? um and when you realize that they, the criminals, are the ones with oversight as these things are happening, then it's not hard to put two and two together and say, okay, yeah, okay, what's your, not if you're involved, but what level are you involved? Because that's really what it boils down to. But like I said, the bigger and more heinous the crimes become, Donna, the easier and simpler it actually becomes to identify who's who, because there's only a handful of people that would even be capable and have the resources and the access necessary to do some of the things that are being done right now. And sunlight is always the best disinfectant, and it's, it makes the boots on the ground rank and file crooks at these polling places think twice about what they're doing. I mean, we've already put it out. They've stocked the election sites with Israeli and British intelligence assets and operatives. And they did it through the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under the Law, aka Boy Schiller Flexner, aka Jerry Spire, Columbia University, the COVID cover up, Harvey Weinstein, like the fixer firms, the assassins, like Harvey Weinstein's attorney David Boies hires to discredit his sexual assault victims, K2 Integrity, or the assassins that they send after Deutsche Bank and Jeffrey Epstein to make judge problems go away. And Royden Hollander shows up at someone's home and to kill a judge, and instead kills her 14-year-old son and wounds her husband. That's Kroll. That's K2 Integrity. That's the 9/11 people. That's the Robert F. Kennedy assassination people. That's the people who were largely behind planning 9/11 in collusion with Henry Kissinger and Bushies and all those people. So they're still, they're I'll say they're alive and well, only for the context of we still have to deal with them as an issue today. There's still a problem that needs solving, but we're going to solve it, and we're solving it.
Well, it's really interesting, and I think the encouragement here is that there's so many good people out there working on righting the United States that is, as much as we see is going wrong, there's a lot more going right. It's just that the good guys are not going to tell everybody exactly what they're doing. That would be an absurd thing. And it's really crazy, because I'll have a lot of people ask me, "Hey, can you ask General Flynn this for me?" I'm like, "You're out of your mind. I don't ask somebody that's got a security clearance anything. If he wants me to know something, he's going to say it. But I would never ask somebody with clearance anything more than, how's your dog today? How's your kids, your family, that sort of thing. Because if you put them in a position like that, you're a traitor too. You're trying to get them to leak information just to serve your curiosity. That is not in the best interest of the United States of America. If you can't figure it out, you got to go to somebody with the clearance, you probably should let this lay and realize that there's a lot of good people out there that are working right now. And our country is in peril. It's in horrific peril right now. I don't think that anybody should, just to solve their own little gossipy curiosity, should get in the way and try to put anything else in danger that's already at danger. All we got to do is do our job, just get to there and vote. Do what you can to help educate people. Do the right thing. If you're ever asked, or if you're blackmailed or something, do the right thing. You know what the difference between right and wrong is.
It's funny. Like, I appreciate you saying that, and you learn by talking to them. Your conversations are very different, and there's a lot of qualifying statements that you'll make where you'll say, "Okay, so when you're my reason for speaking to them is sharing information that they didn't have previously. And so
You're
um,
helping. That's what you're doing. You're helping. You're not asking them to calm your fears. You're
right.
literally there to help them.
And so I'll never forget the first one that I got connected with. Um, they basically told me, uh, we saw this. We had no fucking idea, pardon my French, that that was happening. And there was a board meeting later that day that was scheduled to discuss, like, and it involved our secure server. And they saw it and they obviously did their own due diligence and they looked at it and they said, okay, holy shit. Yeah, that's exactly what that is. And so they send that up the chain. It had, meetings are scheduled and they said, please keep sending and posting stuff. And it's not like I'm sending it directly to them. It's as simple as posting it onto the blockchain. They now have their people um, eyes on, if you will. And so the conversations that you have with them at that point, um, there's a lot of qualifying of statements and questions that you may ask where you would say, okay, so um, if I was gonna blah blah blah, and you can tell me uh, if you can't tell me the answer to this, or if you can't answer this question, that's totally fine. Um, all I'm looking for from them is this helping? Is this effective? Should I do more of this? Should we look in a different direction? Or because I don't give a shit about knowing shit that other people like don't know, like I know something you don't. I don't care about that stuff. I care about knowing things that I've found that are criminal and passing it to the authorities. I don't need the street cred of having, friends like that. Um,
You're there to be helpful. That's a difference. Other than, when people want that kind of information that they shouldn't be, that they should let it lay and not try to put somebody at risk for saying something, right? You're not asking those kind of questions. You're asking, how can I be helpful in fixing this situation? And
yeah,
what else can I do to serve you, sir?
it,
That's your MO.
and and I would encourage, like, when you wonder if things are being effective or not, like you can see little Easter eggs sprinkled throughout things that happen at large. Like when you get information in the hands of the right people that have access to levers of power that are able to make just about anything happen, and you start to see those things, even if they seem miraculous at the rate or at the, you know, how the facts transpired or how the situation, dissolved. You start realizing, okay, people will never know, and that's okay with me, but people will never know that this was meaningful and it positively impacted lives, and that's all you need. And the thing that was horrifying, Donna, is like the first conversation with the first one that I ever connected with was, and these are the people that have access to basically our most sensitive secrets, because they're housed in the same place where we hold all of our most sensitive secrets. Um, when they're surprised, or when they're unable to be, um, when they're not as read in as you are, that's a problem. When they're not as cognizant of what's going on, that's a problem. Um, when and the autistic, like, pattern recognition that I have it's a blessing and a curse, because I say things to people before they realize it, long before they can even put the pieces together, and it just seems like I'm a lunatic, or I'm delusional, or racist, or I'm a crazy, or I have the whole thing wrong. And it's like I wish I could be like in the Matrix where Trinity calls Morpheus or Tank or whatever and says, I need an upload on a B-212 helicopter. She needs to learn how to fly it. And so like he downloads the information into her brain. She just sits there and then she's like learns how to fly it on the spot. It's like I wish I could show you all of the context and the thousands of hours of information and cross coordinations and the financial interests in a second so that you understand. Because if I just say to you, Donna, you don't know what you don't know, or I know more than you, like, trust me, bro, then I'm going to sound like a dick. So it's like, but when when you have that conversation with somebody at that level, and they're just because so much of the government is compartmentalization. They're compartmentalized into the framework of information that they are on a need to know basis, especially with information that's sensitive like that. And so when they are for their career looking at a world through this lens, when the world that affects this lens is really, 100 times larger, then it's hard for them to see all the things in the background within that lens. So when they say, okay, holy shit, we weren't aware of this. And then they say, okay, now we have 3 more people that are going to be monitoring. You're not going to know who they are, but they're going to probably won't even follow you, but they will see your posts regardless of how suppressed they are. That's all that matters because like, if information is put out and it's not acted on and it's not effective, it's theater. Especially in situations that are so serious where our country's in an existential crisis. If the information is not acted on, it's only for my self edification, and I don't do anything for my own self edification, and it's meaningless. And so,
You're
it
there to
wouldn't
hit
be
the
worth.
target and hit the goal, and the goal is of the long game goal. From what I see, you're there for the long game, and that's a win for America, not these little gossipy nonsense things along the way. And that's really what I'm hearing, just for knowledge. Unless it's pertinent to hitting that goal, then it just is a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't I didn't want to become broke doing this for 2 years and nothing else, and just make my life shitty for the fun of it. Like, this isn't like a documentary I'm shooting where it's like men in his prime years, tries, a shit life and just posting on Twitter all the time. Like, that's not, that's not what I had
Like
envisioned.
it's aspired to, right?
Yeah. By the way, I meant to tell you earlier, I really like your shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank you. You know what? It's I was going to do Flannel Friday, but tomorrow I'm not going to be on, so I thought I would do Flannel Friday today.
I like it. It made me remember, actually, I need to go pick up a flannel shirt. I gotta, like, if I'm gonna have videos where like playing music or anything, and like people know I live in Alabama, I feel like I gotta like jazz it up a little bit more on the country vibe sometimes. So I don't know. I might have to get a flannel shirt or something.
You're going to have to get a flannel shirt. You definitely need a flannel shirt.
For sure. But I mean, yeah, it's the good news is that the the most effective eyes that I'll ever get on the information are on the information. So I'll never get um more qualified people seeing it than what I have right now because those people don't exist. And so um because of Elon's buying Twitter, we at least have a chance. Without that having happened, regardless of what you think of Elon, like, we would have no chance. And so um because of all that, our days now in the last 2 weeks, because the last 2 weeks going into and through really November 5th, our culmination and are going to be crazier, in my opinion, than all the previous 2 years combined, because these people see the writing on the wall. They're wargaming their own existence as we speak, and the probabilities that they have of success and avoiding prison and avoiding death penalties and avoiding accountability for the worst crimes that have ever been committed against humanity. And they deserve it 100 times over. So with those same wargaming algorithms, some of those, your best GTO strategy here is cause a natural disaster, cause a war to start, cause a terrorist attack, cause something that shakes the framework of America. And so the information that we put out is not just for the exposing of criminals, but it's to as a deterrent against rabid wild animals that are backed into a corner from taking the next step and actually pushing that red button, if you will.
Right.
And that's why I had my first sleepless night in years, probably a week ago or so. I was just, my brain is on hyperdrive right now because they know that the clock is winding down. It's winding down on their end and on our end. And this is coming to a huge inflection point that culminates. I don't think it'll finish on November 5th because I'm pretty sure the traders in Georgia and Arizona plan on taking like 6 months to count the votes or whatever. But we're watching everything and passing it along to the people that can actually do something about it and thwart it and cut it out. And there's more to come on the FEMA Hurricane Duke Energy situation. There's a lot more to come on that. That racket is only getting started. There's a lot of fireworks to come from that.
Well, and the criminals are committing their crimes. To your point, as it gets easier to catch them, the bigger the crime is. And you know, the thing of it is that if you catch one of these little rats at the bottom and put the squeeze on them, they're going to start chirping like a bird and, you know, telling about everybody below and above them, you know. So I think that I think we're in an amazing time, but all of us are going to have to stand without wavering when things change, because they're going to change. They have to change. There's no sustainability with the system that we have right now, either economically or societally right now. We are in collapse, and in my opinion, and it kind of needs to happen. I've actually been praying for it for quite a few years, because the things that we're accustomed to are the very things that are contributing to our demise. So the change that we're going to see, I believe, is very necessary, and we need to truly just run right into the fire, get this thing done as quick as we can, and set the country back on its feet again. What a wonderful time to be alive. Truly.
Yeah, what an honor.
It's an honor to be here and to see what's happening and actually meet some people that are willing to lay their lives down rather than capitulate to these global criminals who have waged war on the entire world. You know, people, what, Third World War? We're already in it. We're already in it. It's just not kinetic. And God help us if it ever goes kinetic. I hope it never does, because, you know, you start that kind of nonsense and it's never going to quit. You know, we need to go to the direction of peace and disable them in a beautifully orchestrated takedown, which I believe we are seeing right before our eyes, the change of this old guard. So, you know, having the hope that we have in the fact that, and I do believe that God is leading us out of this, and that he's been gracious enough to us to give us another chance. And I do believe that. I believe that with my whole heart, that God is with us and he's giving us another chance. But that means also that we have to do the right thing. If we're the body of Christ, it's time to get serious about this and realize that we got a big job ahead of us. Starts right with the everyday choices that we make, and understanding what the takedown, what the central issues of this takedown has been. and not shy away from it. This is good versus evil. This isn't countries
100%.
against each other, because I think that quite a few of the countries don't actually exist. I think they're proxies. They have been for a very, very, very long time. Would you agree with that?
100%. 100%.
I don't. I think, Ukraine. That's a CIA, Mossad, GCHQ country. I don't know. That's my opinion on it, and I
The
can't.
worst experiments in the world happen in Ukraine. Like things you can't even imagine. The worst horrors you can imagine happen in Ukraine. Um, and that's why the CIA basically overthrew it in 2014, because they had been planning the events that have transpired the last 4 and 5 years for a lot longer than most people realize. But going back to the assassins and K2 and Kroll, you got Burisma and Privatbank. I mean, who did the Ukrainian National Bank hire to investigate Burisma and Privatbank? Well, they hired Kroll, of course, and the uh, prosecutor in Deribask, I think. Uh, don't quote me on it's either Deribask or one of the other territories, but the prosecutor, um, he basically said, like after doing his own investigation, yeah, Kroll wasn't like investigating; they were complicit in the whole thing. They were right there alongside all of these people, and this is where you've got the Pelosi, Kerry, Romney, and Biden, and they're just using it as their own personal piggy bank. And so, um, Ukraine is one of the central like degeneracy hubs for the rest of the world, and bioweapons and oh god, it,
Experimentation and everything.
yeah, adrenochrome, like it's all real, and it happens there and other places. So
When you look at like the borders and these horrible people that have come across our border that are part of the gangs, and what they're capable of, and they transmit their crimes because they want to put people in check over fear. We've got people that are capable of dismembering and beheading in order to strike terror into families and to shut people down through fear. You see what's happened in with Maduro down in Venezuela, and the stuff that's gone on there, and the connections with China and Venezuela. They have the ability to hit our country with missiles fairly quickly because of proximity. I'm not sure if everybody understands the clear and present threat that we are actually under. It never really goes away. We just have a sense of it's happening in their country. As long as it doesn't cross our borders, it's in our country. People just don't realize that it's actually here. And until, I'm afraid that people don't see the actual evidence of it in their backyard, it's still far off, and they can't put their arms around what's happening. But there's a lot of connections with Venezuela, I'm sure you could talk about too, especially when you get into the election systems and how the connections with Venezuela, the programming, and the election system. I mean, this has been going on all over the place. I know that they were checking signatures in Bangladesh. This is a global problem. It's not just one area. They've got criminals all over the place. But what can you tell us about Venezuela
well,
currently?
as far as the election that's currently happening, um, Venezuela, Maduro and Smartmatic and all that, like that's been litigated dozens of times, and Antonio Mujica and Mark Malik Brown and George Soros and International Crisis Group. Well, basically, Smartmatic is a chassis that is pretty much uniform across uh, most of the elections administration apparatuses like Dominion, Hardin, or Civic, ES&S, what have you. They all are built and programmed to be almost identical to each other because the same people built them. People forget that Eric Coomer, before he was at Smartmatic, he was at Sequoia. and then he was at Smartmatic, and then he was at Dominion. And so it's a lot of recycling of people because they want their group to be able to control outcomes and determine fates for, you know, people and trillions of dollars. So what we've seen in this election that I've put out in Pennsylvania, Vivada Casino, Relax Gaming, it's partnered and owned by Kindred Group. Um, it is, they got their license to go live in New Jersey on December 2023, closely tied in with the Pennsylvania governor, found them in the Pennsylvania governor's domain. And under something called Wolf Transition PA, which is hilariously ironic because Tom Wolf, these same people tied to Josh Shapiro and Mark Rowland, compromised Tom Wolf, who was also one of the nursing home governor murderers, along with Jocelyn Benson and Cuomo and Phil Murphy up in New Jersey. And so the Relax Gaming and Vivada Casino partnership, it goes all the way over to Curacao, Malta, Belgrade, Serbia, obviously, which is where Dominion's world headquarters are. DXC Technologies, which is also Pfizer and one of Israel's telecommunications enabling apparatuses that's based in Belgrade, Serbia as well. In Belgrade, the problem that we have is that a lot of their diaspora operatives that are closely tied in with the CIA and with Mossad are basically here yet already in the United States. They're embedded within New York. They're embedded within Ohio. Ohio is one of their most important states, and Mike DeWine, who's the other governor that was a COVID murderer last I checked, they're all complicit in the bioweapons, biotech, bioterrorism with Cleveland Clinic, with NYPH, with Weill Cornell Hospital, with NYU Langone, and with Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Research. And it goes even as far as Mount Sinai Hospital System and Cedars-Sinai out on the West Coast. Their hub is in Ohio, in Cleveland. And so you've got Case Western Reserve University out there. You've got obviously Cleveland Clinic, and they have brought in these bioterrorists to basically have their central hub right there in Ohio, in a traditionally conservative state. And it's further along, like, you know, Canada's right up north across the border from them. And so you've got Phoebe Novakovic and her General Dynamics people and their subcontractor ArmorWorks, which is involved in the first Trump assassination. Phoebe Novakovic is a Serbian CIA spy, former wife of Michael Vickers, one of the 51 former intel officers who signed the Hunter Biden laptop letter. Michael Vickers, chairman of BAE Systems, just like Michael Chertoff, Mossad asset, who helped plan 9/11. Traitorous as the day is long. Phoebe Novakovic is on the board of Abbott Labs. She's the chairman and CEO of General Dynamics. And she's also on the board of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon's company, where they fund all the Jeffrey Epstein child trafficking bullshit. Well, a lot of it at least. And certainly JCF, Jewish Communal Fund, is right there alongside them with Catholic Charities and the whole deal, and Save the Children. So that's Pennsylvania. And so what I'm doing is I'm putting out this information. Wisconsin, they have reported elections sites were having machine failures and long lines and blah, blah, blah. So I made a post, a quick thread about Wisconsin saying, hey, Ken Meyer, fix the fucking machines or we're going to expose your Chinese Communist Party, GCHQ treason all over again. Because Ken Meyer at the University of Wisconsin-Madison is a guy who literally was paid to do a study to determine the anticipated loss of votes or voter suppression down to a reasonably accurate specific number based on wait times. And so this is the guy that was funded by our tax dollars to do a study to say, okay, if we can make long lines last an hour or 3 hours or 6 hours, we can know exactly how many votes will be lost that this candidate will not have in their vote totals. If a million people were going to vote for Donald Trump, but they were able to make the lines 3 hours consistently at voting places in Wisconsin, and they knew that would knock him down to 750,000. He's the guy that would do that. And
Wow.
so that's happening in Wisconsin. In let's see, there was another state that we put stuff out in. Put out some stuff about Texas. Put out. I'm trying to remember. Georgia is a big mess with the Chinese Communist Party and GCHQ and Israel. Huawei is a big player over there. Tarrant County, Texas is another one. It's the same players. Arizona, the recorder in Pima County is in collusion with a platform called Arena, which is Impactive, which is AKA Connack rebranded. For those who don't remember, Connack stealing poll worker data and voter data. Eugene Yu
In Michigan,
arrested.
at Michigan State, this is all tied in with Michigan.
Yep. And Eugene Yu gets arrested or indicted by Gascon's deputy DA. Gascon becomes cognizant of it, lets Eugene Yu flee the country, flees to Malaysia, Singapore, where a lot of this bullshit happens as well. And then he gives him all his servers back and pays him $5 million for his troubles. And so people are waking up. People are cognizant that this is clearly a racket. Like you're letting the bad guys go, and like you're rewarding them for defrauding and compromising America itself. So that's not a sustainable model. The fraud with the UOCAVA that they have planned, the military ballots overseas. I put something out yesterday and the day before. FEMA, the disaster in North Carolina, Deanne Criswell, who's the administrator of FEMA, her partner's is Pat Murphy. He's the New York State Division of Homeland Security commissioner, and his name is Pat Murphy. He controlled the New York response for Cuomo and for Hochul for a little while. Meanwhile, his partner, Deanne Criswell, was responsible for New York City COVID response. Well, there's a younger Pat Murphy who looks oddly like this older gentleman, Pat Murphy, at NYS DHS. His name is also Pat Murphy, and he's the former Secretary of the Army. He's also the vice chairman of the DNC's platform committee. And he's also tied in with Cerner Group. And we know that they're planning on defrauding the UOCAVA ballots to make up the votes that they don't have with the American people. They're planning on making up those deficits with foreign overseas military service men and women and voters who are just overseas. Democrats abroad is what they call it, democratsabroad.org. And they think that they're just going to have random people with no proof of ID or proof of residency in the United States just vote for the fuck of it. And we're just going to trust them. Because if you allow that, you could literally have anybody at any place in the world cast a vote in our election, and you can't ask questions. No, we're not doing that bullshit. You're not even going to get away. You're not even going to get to do that. So that's how bad it is for these people. They're willing to go to those links. And so they like to cover all their bases, but
Just more evidence to hang them on for treason. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
And or the crimes that they've committed. This is a direct attack against the United States of America, the attack against we the people.
it is 100%.
Keep heaping the coals on your heads, people, because there's some of us that will live to see these crimes paid back. And we've got a long memory. I don't know about you, but I don't get over stuff like this real quickly. And I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people out there that are like you and I, that we just don't like get over it.
There's a certain point and a certain level of bullshit I can deal with and tolerate and put up with.
But not
But
this.
yeah, there's certain
Not
things that,
this.
like, once you do this, now you're my sworn enemy. Now I'm going to spend my life destroying you until you're destroyed and there's salt sprinkled on the ground where you were, so that this kind of cancer can never grow back again.
I agree with you.
That's what has to happen, and that's
Top
what's
to
going to happen.
bottom, and I mean top to bottom. It has to, the clean out of what's happened worldwide has to be a top to bottom. The last person that had so much as a little finger touching this election, that was involved in the crime. I think we've got like 130 clerks in the state of Michigan that resigned. Probably a good choice, and I'm hoping that they're singing like canaries on the rest of them, or they're complicit. And I honestly too, I'd like to hear some of what you have to say on Michigan, because I think Michigan is pretty close to the top of the head of the snake here too. Although we don't talk about it, because those people that are really involved in it, you don't really see them. They have their little show puppets out there for people to see, but the ones that are pulling the strings, you don't see them, and you rarely will hear of them.
Yeah, so Michigan, Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson, and Gretchen Whitmer, they're Mossad. And so Julie Platt, who I mentioned earlier, was installed as the chairman of Penn by Mark Rowan, who's the chairman of UJA and the chairman of Wharton. Julie Platt got Michigan taxpayers to pay $15 million for her own private security from a group called JCSI, Jewish Community Services, Inc. And it's a group that is a collaboration of the Department of Homeland Security, the ADL, which we know is Mossad. Department of Homeland Security is run by William Bratton, the chairman of Teneo Risk, who we know is Mossad and GCHQ. And his co-chair is the lady who defrauded Fannie Mae. What is her name? I can't, it escapes me. But yeah, so what they're doing, you have DHS, ADL, Secure Community Network, SCN, and then an organization called Live Secure. Live Secure is a program created by the JFNA, the Jewish Federations of North America, which is the parent company of UJA Federation. So it's basically the overseer of the Mossad apparatus embedded here in the United States. And so Julie Platt is the chairman of JFNA. Well, so she's Mark Rowan's boss, and her sister is Mark Rowan's president while he's chairman of UJA. So they got Michigan taxpayers in the 24 and 25 budget to pay $15 million for private security funded by Michiganders to the tune of funneling cash to Live Secure, which also happens to be chaired by Julie Platt, the Secure Community Network, to the ADL, and to the DHS. And what they're doing is these Mossad Jews that are embedded in the elections administration process, the government of these states, to operate at the behest of not just Israel, but really a global Jewry mindset. So it includes the UK and the Five Eyes as well, and Ukraine certainly. They have gotten their own people installed in positions of power, and now they're using your tax dollars to pay for their own private security because they see the writing on the wall. They see that people are waking up to the idea that, yeah, there's clearly an like even Tucker and Elon mentioned this finally, like 2 weeks ago. There's clearly an anti-white agenda in this country. There's
Oh
an
yeah, there's
agenda.
no two ways about it. It's been going on for a long time.
And so now what they're trying to do is they're trying to fund their own paramilitaries to take American citizens to protect themselves from American citizens while they legislate over in DC with people like Mary McCord to take away our ability to even have a two-way and form militias. And remember, the framers said we don't have the right to overthrow a tyrannical government. We have the obligation to overthrow a tyrannical government, which is clearly adversarial to the American people as it currently is, and it's not going to stay the way it is, or America's gone. And so you have the people, and whites are an easy target because, I mean, when you think about the Nazis, like, who joined the war to defeat the Nazis? Like, the white people that are living in the United States, overwhelming. And so there's an idea that we're going to be these foot soldiers and these financiers for the degenerate aims and goals of countries other than the United States, and we're going to send our people to fight and die. Like, that's absurd. And it only took eyes getting on that for people to realize, yeah, this is a shit deal for us, and we're not doing this anymore. And oh, by the way, you're going to pay us restitution. And so that'll be the thing that on the back end of this, that, Pat Byrne, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, made a post about a week ago saying, I think that we need to offer like forgiveness or whatever for 2020, but not for anyone doing it in 2024 is a traitor. I was like, Pat, I respect you, but not only no, but fuck that.
I gotta agree with you. We've got to go back and we got to get everybody that cheated in the 20. They knew what they were doing. And you know what? I hate to say it, but a leopard doesn't change their spots very easily, right? So I just think that they're just going to wait to regroup the troops and come back at us again and do it again.
Yeah, the recourse has to be such that it sends a clear message that not only is it, we're giving you accountability for the things that you did, but it needs to send a clear message to everybody else that might get the idea in the future that it'll never happen again. Because, and they like to seed narratives as they go along psychologically through their, Rand Corporation, which is a psychological manipulation tool. A lot of these operatives that we see embedded within these movements are Rand Corporation, because there's a psychological buy-in aspect to this. They need you assuming that this is the status quo, or this is the norm, this is the Overton window as it is normally. And so they like to throw out phrases like the fall of Rome. And I started seeing a lot of fall of Rome posts like over the last 2 years from people that I used to think I agreed with politically. And as time went by, they, continue to unmask themselves even more. But then you realize, no, we're not doing the fall of Rome thing either. So you can cut all of those analogies out, because America, you're not going to precondition the American people to think we've had a good run. It's over. It's not fucking over. I'm sorry to tell you, we're not Rome. We are a resilient people, and every war that's been won has been fought with the with the support of the people that reside in this country. Like, let me say it this way: every righteous war that's ever been won, because a lot of the wars we realize we fought haven't been righteous. They've been, just like Julian Assange said, they're not designed to be won or lost. They're designed to be permanent. And that's a harsh indictment of our military industrial complex and those with interests profiteering on death and destruction on Earth. So, but yeah, America is not Rome. America is resilient. America is going to stay America. And I would be cautious watching anybody that's trying to even push that narrative, because
never underestimate the American spirit.
100%. I mean, 3% of the colonials are who fought the British. And we were a bunch of ragtag, like, you know, we're not going to take it, you know.
Flannel shirt wearing people with squirrel guns hiding behind trees.
Yeah, like it was a bunch of Appalachian style, like people that was like, yeah, we're not paying taxes to you. You're 3,000 miles away. What kind of bullshit is that nonsense? Like, so it is what it is. I'm just, there's so much going on right now that it's like you said, it's an honor to live in such consequential times and be the one that has the opportunity and the honor and the privilege of standing in the doorway to preserve this republic that we were blessed with by people a lot braver and younger than we were at these times. So that's all.
It's amazing. Well, I don't know. There's absolutely honored to have you on every single time. I learn so much from you every single time that you're here, because the amount of information you can process is just unbelievable, and the amount of work you've put into this is also just amazing. It's just my favorite researcher. I just got to say it. I mean, there is I've got a new gal, Vicki Davis, that I'm amazed by what she comes up with. But the sheer volume of connections that you keep in your head is shocking. And the people behind the economic warfare that's been waged on our nation. And also, just a resolve to lay these people out who have been involved in the takeover, the coup of the United States of America, the war they've waged on we the people. Just extraordinary. It's amazing. I'd love to go through, when maybe the next time we have you back on, I'd love for you to go through specifically Michigan, because there's a lot of stuff here that, unless you research a lot, including like the funeral homes over in the Detroit area with the fetuses that they found in the ceilings, which was attached back to Huma Abedin and Hillary Clinton and the Muslim Brotherhood and all of this stuff. We don't, and I think it's really clear. I don't have any issues with the Jewish people, not at all. But I do have with the global governments and the people that have infiltrated in the organizations that have really waged war against this nation. Same thing with the Chinese people. I have no issues with the people. It's the structure. I have more issues with Americans right now that have fallen in with this global crime syndicate and have been, involved as the enemy within our nation. I've got some big issues with that. Huge issues. I don't care what they say that they're aligned with or what they identify with. I don't really care. It's good versus evil. And to get rid of all of the labels is going to be the first step in just being able to really evaluate and say, you've either broken the law, you've either committed crimes, complicit high crimes of treason, of subversion, of crimes against humanity. And going back to the adrenochrome thing that's gone on in Ukraine, I think I want to talk about that some more too, and these crimes that they've committed. I met with Jason Jones. I was at a meeting with him, and they got a chance to talk to him. The level of crimes and what people are capable of, I think it would really shock a lot of people when you get into like the, I'll throw it out there. There's some of it, the Lolita. I won't even go there right now, because you get into the mutilation of human beings. It really would make people, their hearts stop.
It's worse than most people can fathom.
They can't fathom what they're capable of. And it's unfortunate, but I think there's enough of us that have stood in the way and have been, trying to learn to stop this thing and blow the horn, the warning siren out here of what's coming this way, what's already here. And if you don't think you're involved in politics, you will be, because it's a matter of life and death. It really is. So
100%.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on. Let's say a prayer. You want to pray, or you want me to?
You can.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Jonathan and the wisdom and the knowledge that you've given him to bring forward so that we can see the enemy that we're fighting and make some very hard choices to follow you rather than following this beast world system that we have going on. Thank you for David and Ralph and Karen and all the other people out there who fight tirelessly to expose the truth, to bring it into the light so that more people can help us. And I ask that you would truly inspire every single person out there to do something today, base level, to go out and vote and to defend this nation with our vote. No matter what happens, we still have a duty. No matter how rigged the elections are, we still have a duty. And I know you're walking us out of this, and we trust you. We know that you're with us in all times, that you will never leave or forsake us, no matter what it looks like. And you will provide us the answers as we walk along the path to the challenges and opportunities that are put before us. We trust you in all things. We love you, and we will follow you no matter what, unwavering in whatever you ask us to do, because we have nothing to fear. We have absolutely nothing to fear. We know where we're going, no matter what happens, and we are willing to walk unwavering by your power, your strength, your provision, and your goodness in all things. We love you so very much. And we ask that you would give everybody out there hope so that they can keep their heads in the game, thinking, not reacting, but thinking and planning and acting with what it is that you ask us to do. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
There you go. Well, thank you so much. I want you on again. Okay. It can't be so long next time because it's been a while since you've been on here. And every time, if you were on, I know you're a busy guy, right? But if you were on here every week, I would just be here like, okay, I'm finally making all these connections and making it stick, right? And I think everybody feels the same way. You know, you're always welcome here. And let me know when you want to come back on again, because any day that Jonathan Cagle is on BNN is a good day.
Well, you're very kind, Donna. Your check's in the mail, by the way.
Well, yeah, there's no check in the mail there, but you do play the piano, and he sends me songs and such that he plays. You always send me these, that your music at the perfect time, and it usually comes through late at night. Jonathan will send me something that he's playing or working on, and I'm like, oh, there's the beauty of being a human being coming through to speak to each of our hearts, and have another thing to be thankful for, the talents that God has given us on this earth. Thank you so much. So without any further ado, guys, here's that part of the show. Go to Brandenburg4Governor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who's ever non-conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I would like to have a discussion with the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, about that someday, wearing cowboy boots. With that said, everyone, remember that we're not alone. God will never leave nor forsake you. And if you're having problems, turn to him. He has an answer. And he's right here all the time. Just turn to him and he'll give you the answers. So God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love. And God bless America. Make it a great day. If you don't have a good example, be one. I will not be broadcasting tomorrow or Monday because I will be traveling. I've got lots of things going on. My schedule has gotten much, much, much busier. And but that doesn't mean we're going to stop. We'll be here. Just go back and rewatch, episodes. There's, I don't know, several of them that Jonathan's done too. So if you want a refresher course, that's a good time to do that. And have a great weekend. I'll be back on Tuesday of next week.